Hey, everybody hear me all right? I'm not really good with a microphone. But I live with a wonderful woman, and she has a loud voice, and I'm kind of learning it, so I do well without one. I want to thank you all for coming tonight for the session we're going to have about the Little Falls Dam. Got a good-sized group tonight. I'm hoping we get a lot of good questions, and we'll talk a little bit in a minute about those questions and how you can handle those. My name is Peter Biermeyer. I actually live in Madison, Wisconsin. I actually live in Pittsburgh, Wisconsin, but I work out of the central office in Madison, downtown Madison. And I'm the section chief for recreation planning. I have to do this to remember this. Recreation planning and development for state parks. So anything to do with recreation in state parks, anything to do with planning or master planning, anything to do with capital development like building dams, falls under my purview. I've been with the DNR for about 15 years. Before that, I was in other recreational businesses in Wisconsin. Actually grew up, I want to make sure you understand this, grew up in the Eau Claire area. My family all was from St. Paul. I spent a lot of time in this area when I was younger, so I certainly know it well. Little Lake Dam is the dam and lake itself, and the whole park has always been one of my family's favorites, so I'm really glad to be here tonight. I will help be your moderator as we go through tonight, and I just want to talk to you up front about a couple things. First of all, somebody asked me where the bathrooms are. This is like the most important thing that you got to know. So the bathrooms are right behind the double door there, just in front of the cabinets. And magically on the cabinets, we have cookies tonight and coffee. And anytime during the presentation, don't feel like if you start to smell the coffee, you want some. Anytime tonight, feel free to walk up and grab yourself a cup of coffee. Cookies also. So we're going to start here. Here's how our format's going to go. We're going to have a group of presenters present a whole bunch of good information to you. While we're doing that, we'd like you to just kind of hold back if you can with your questions, and we'll address those later. As they go through their presentations, if you've got a question, you can make a note of it for yourselves, but realize that they're going to provide so much information, some of your questions may be answered at some other point in the presentation. So feel free when you're done we'll give everybody a few minutes. You can write out your question, and you can do one of three things with it at that point. Well, you can do four if you come making a paper airplane with it and sitting it up front here. But the three things you can do are, we will pick it up. We'll come down the aisles and pick up your questions, and we'll read those out loud, and our staff here can answer those. Secondly, you can, at the end of the meeting, if you don't want it read, we'll be happy to collect those either up front or in the back. You also can send them in, your questions, you can write them down, send them in by email. On the front of the agenda, if I can draw everybody's attention to that, at the bottom, there are two website addresses. The first one is ours. It's the DNR address, and that's the address for the project itself. And if you go to that website address, you'll find everything that has been presented to date in all the papers that have been presented, and you'll find a whole bunch of quality information. If you can remember this, I believe it's on the right side of that web page. There's a link to what's called Gov Delivery. If you click on that Gov Delivery, they will send you, they being DNR staff, will send you updates as they come out to your email address. It's a great service. So if something changes, people learn things, you get it delivered to you in the mail, so it's really cool. Also on that website address is Aaron Mason's email. Aaron would take questions directly from you at any point from here on. So don't think tonight is the only time to send in questions. We'd like those questions anytime. So without a lot of further ado, I'm going to, Dan, if I could ask you to come up.
Yeah.
This guy's a special guy. Many of you probably know him, Dan Bauman.
I don't even know what that means, but I don't get compliments often, so thank you.
You bet. Dan's the Secretary Director for West Central Wisconsin. This happens to be his little area he hangs out in West Central Wisconsin.
It is.
And Dan's going to sort of introduce the staff, and they're going to begin to give their presentations. So when you're done, again, we'll collect the questions, bring them up front. Dan's going to help me sort them out, and we'll read them, and people can answer them.
Thank you, Peter.
Peter, I do have to just interject one time. Dan, and I know you respect this because we have had a meeting. Are you saying that there is absolutely no participation or questions while the most experienced professionals that the DNR have are present here, but we cannot ask any questions.
Well, what I'd like to do, I expect there's probably going to be a lot of questions at first, and some of them maybe ones we can just rattle through and answer. We can take oral questions after that, so
We're going
fine
to
with it.
stay here as long as you have questions, Jim. So these folks are going to be available.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Not a problem.
Good to see
I'm
you.
sorry if that was misleading.
No, I was just going to say thank you.
Having done a lot of these in the past, not on dams, but public meetings, informational meetings, those kind of things, not everybody's comfortable raising their hand. I know, Jim, you might be. I know the other Jim, Laird, probably isn't. So it's a good way for us to capture what your questions are, make sure we've answered it. If there's more than one person that has that, it kind of gives us the indication that it's on more than one person's mind, and you've been really good about those questions up to this date. Our last meeting, as was shared, and you saw the frequently asked questions that are now on the website as well, that those were kind of the culmination or the boiling down of the questions from the first meeting and our responses. The second meeting, as we'll go through today, are kind of to present what information that we've gathered since that first meeting. You'll have a chance to look at it as we're going through it, write down questions. That way we can have the experts that are here, or our staff specialists, approach those questions as best we can. And then if we have your name and it's something that we missed or information that we need to gather and get back to you or add to the frequently asked questions, those sheets that you have at the ends and laying around here really help us capture your input, because that's what we're here for, is your input. So my piece here is to start with the recap and history of the project. If any of you have been, hey Agnes, how are you? I've been into some living rooms talking about this project. I've been to Agnes's committee. One of our county board supervisors, Agnes Ring, invited me to come to her committee and talk about it, and it was on this local cable access. So I don't want to get too deep into the weeds here, just to let you know that the dam is, and some of that could be shared on the feasibility study will be out there, the executive study, or the executive summary of the feasibility study about how old this structure is. I think 1916, 1919, somewhere around there is when the original, and through that iteration, it's gone through different configurations, repairs, investigations, those kind of things. Because it is a large dam, it is a high hazard dam, and that ranking of high hazard means that if it would happen to fail, that there could be or would be damage to public infrastructure, homes, residences, buildings, those kind of things, and the potential for human harm. So that's the rating it gets. And based on what's below the dam, it tells you how much water or what storm event the dam has to pass, be able to pass safely without overtopping. And in this case, since it's a high hazard dam, it's a large dam, there's two criteria it has to meet, and that's the Q100, or the 1% chance storm. And I've had some of these questions, so I just kind of like to address a little bit about if it's a 100-year storm, when we saw the storm last year, does that mean we're safe for 100 years? It doesn't. The easiest piece is to say that it's a 100-year storm because it's actually the 1% chance. So 1% inverted is 100. You know, a 1 in 100 chance any year that this storm could be seen. And because of the high hazard rating, there's a Q1000 that the dam has to be able to safely pass through the structure itself and any auxiliary. So once it gets so high right now, the capacity of the dam is nowhere near that. And because it doesn't meet the state standards for a high hazard dam to be able to pass the water, is why we're here today. That's the history of the project. Should we have been here in the past or sooner? Absolutely. Was it an internal struggle about when do we actually embark on this? We felt as professionals that we couldn't wait any longer, that we needed to get started. And that was the piece that said, all right, we can't pass the flow. It's not meeting the safe, by definition, standards. We're going to draw it down, and we're going to accelerate, or we're going to move forward with the alternatives on how to fix it. Getting back to the little thing about Q100 or Q1000, the question that I got was, okay, normally we see 100 cubic feet per second going through this structure. How do you come up with 13,000 as the 1% and 16,000 cubic feet per second as the Q1000. And I think that in very simple terms, and my background is engineering, so it's really kind of a statistical as well as a geophysical modeling approach here. This is the watershed. So if you're familiar, I mean, here's the county boundary. This is the Willow River watershed. So any water that falls inside this figure drains to the Willow River. And that is estimated to be about 292 square miles. So when you get to the Little Falls Dam, it's roughly that 200, a little over 200 square miles drainage area. Now water infiltrates on your lawn at a certain amount, maybe an inch and a half an hour, or over a 24-hour period. So anything that falls and doesn't infiltrate becomes overland flow or drainage to the river. So when you're talking about how much a dam has to pass in this 1% chance storm, it's based on how much rain is falling in a 24-hour period. It's really a statistical analysis of how often we would see that. And then once you have the precipitation, it's a matter of what's the slope of the land, because if it's steep, it runs off quickly. How much impervious surface, how many roads, buildings, which all has changed since the 60s. If you've lived here since the 60s, we have a lot more buildings, impervious surfaces, parking lots, those kind of things. And they all contribute to an increase in the amount of flow you're going to see. And all that is done through an engineering model to predict how much flow you can expect on that percent chance of storm. And in this case, those engineering models identify that 13,000 for the 1% and 16,000 for the 1,000-year storm. So that's what the design standard is. That's what the law currently says. You have to design this dam to be able to safely pass, to protect any structures, roads, human life downstream, to be called compliant. So right now we have a non-compliant structure, and we have to treat ourselves as a state just like we would treat the owner of the Lake Malibu Dam. So if we know that we are not in compliance with the law, we need to move forward with finding a way to come into compliance. Okay? And we pulled the trigger on that. We had conversations really since probably 2011 on when the best time to do that is. It was all internal discussion. It wasn't a public conversation at that point because we needed to come up with our basic plan of how do we move forward. And we kind of pulled the trigger on that earlier this spring. Dam safety, the experts in this work said we really need to get it down. And we need to move the project forward so that we're in compliance, just like we make everybody else be. And that's where I think I'll hand it off to Gordon because he was the one working with the engineers. Gordon Stinson is an engineer with our lands department. He works on these properties for the lands division. It's really kind of a mishmash of professionals that take on these kind of projects, of engineers, economists, local property managers, our supervisors and management staff. So there is quite a number of folks that have their finger on this one, and we work collectively to find out what solutions are available, what alternatives are best. That's why you see a number of us department folks here today, because there was some question in the past. I think Jim asked it, who's on first? We got the Ayers, we got the Sturdivants, we got the Rogneys. We're all part of the puzzle here so that we don't miss anything from an engineering standpoint. We all kind of keep ourselves in check on what is the law and are we following it correctly. And then we work as a team to put together the alternatives that we take then to management on, okay, here's the alternatives, here's what they cost, here's the public feedback, here's what the public locally want to see, and then decisions are made. And we go forward with finding funding, working with the public on funding, working with our local legislators, those kind of things. We each have, Aaron and I both have a distribution list that mine includes the legislators, town officials, county officials, some businesses locally that I keep informed of the meetings, the news releases, the minute note or the meeting notes, those kind of things. And Aaron does the same with more of the friends groups and local interests. So with that, please write down your questions of anything I've shared. And with that, I'll turn it over to Gordon to kind of talk about the feasibility. Is that right?
Well,
Oh, I'm
actually,
sorry.
we're going to jump into Mike's presentation on the drawdown.
I didn't even stick to my own agenda. Sorry about that.
Getting ready to give your presentation. Some people came in late very quickly. If you didn't get an agenda, I'd be happy to hand out. Over there, we need one here. Okay.
All right, can everybody hear me all right? Okay. Well, I can check it, I guess. I'm Mike Rogney. I'm the dam safety engineer. I'm based out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin at the service center there. So I've been kind of taking lead as part of dam safety goes with this project. So today I'm just going to kind of be going through how, the general process of how we're going to draw this down, what gates, what type of rates and everything like that. And then I'm going to go through how we're going to minimize sediment transport as best as we can. So to start things off, again, the timing of the drawdown is June 1st. That's what we're anticipating to start. Again, that will be based off of kind of weather conditions too. So if we see excessive flows, we're going to postpone it a little bit, just so we're not doing it during a dangerous period. The completion of the full drawdown will, be based on site conditions. It might depend on if we get a rain event, things like that. So we can't really put a date on that right now. And then, lastly, the impoundment will be drawn down until the project completion. So it might take several years. So to do the drawdown, we came up with we're gonna proceed with the stage drawdown. So the initial stage is we're gonna draw it down to the sill of that big gate. Well, you can't really see the picture on top there, and we're gonna leave it there. So that allows for all the disturbed sediment to kind of settle out a little bit. It also eliminates probably about a good 6 feet ahead, so that means that the hydraulic pressure has been reduced. So we're going to leave it there, let some sediments settle, and then that allows for the upper part of the lake to kind of dry out, and then the natural vegetation will establish throughout that period too. So there'll still be a little pool there that'll be held, that'll be drawn down in a later period. Which leads me to the final stage. Again, that's based off of site conditions. And what kind of efforts that we can implement for our sediment. I'll go into that stuff in a little bit. To complete the full drawdown, all gates will be opened, wide open, which includes the sluice gate, all the tainer gates, and everything. So the full drawdown will be completed by then. So the rate that is typically recommended for a drawdown is 6 inches per 24 hours. So that's 6 inches of the lake in 24-hour period. So that's going to be monitored while we're doing the drawdown. It's a very slow, many dams that have been drawn in the past, it's kind of what they've used as far as like a slow, steady drawdown. You can easily control it, you can maintain sediment, it's just kind of what has worked in the past. That rate may need to be increased or decreased depending on what kind of sediment is observed during it. So if it's a coarser sediment, we don't want to meander. We want more of a kind of a straight, because if you're meandering, you're cutting through the lake bed, which might cause more sediment transport. So kind of based off what we see out there, if we see finer material, we might have to slow it down. So it's all going to be based off of what we see, and just to prevent any sort of meandering. It's kind of what we looked at. Again, the mechanism that we're going to do this by, I have a picture next. We're going to be using the 22 by 12 foot large gate. That's the lowest sill elevation on the dam. So that's the lowest part of it. So we're going to be using that as a primary way to lower the water level. And then we also will be cracking the sluice gate a little bit initially, just to make sure that it operates and just to make sure that there's no compaction on that gate so that we can fully draw it down.
Is the gate you're going to use?
Yep, I got a picture coming up here. Yep.
Folks that have it in front of them?
So here's a little diagram of just the large tainer gates right here. This is one that we're going to be using to draw it down. And then that sluice gate I was talking about, that's where once the full drawdown is completed, that's where the river channel is going to be going through the normal flow. That won't be operated right away. Like I said, just a little bit, just initially, just to see that it operates and everything. But it will primarily be through this. So you can see this elevation's at 728, and then this one's 12 feet lower. So there'll still be a pool there. So that's the drawdown part of it. That's kind of how we're going to tackle that part. Now I'm going to kind of touch on the sediment management efforts and what we're going to try to do as much as possible and what economically feasible These are the options that we're looking at. I'll go through there. So initially, to kind of get an idea of how much sediment is out there and what we're looking at, some department staff went out there in December of 2014, drilled some holes in the ice, about 10 cross sections or so, and then they used the Vexlars, or I can't remember, whatever other equipment they used, and they kind of probed down just to see what kind of sediment depths that they got. This depth was kind of just mainly used for a scale reference, just to give you an idea of what's in the possible channel, where the channel is predicted to be once it reestablishes, and portions a little bit outside of it. So an approximate result is about 9 feet of sediment in the old river channel. Again, that's approximate. We don't know exactly where it's going to cut, And then the area is a little bit outside is about 3 feet. So I kind of limitations of that survey, though, is there is variability in the solids content. So you don't know if it's fine, you don't know if it's coarse, you don't know what exactly is going to detach and transfer exactly with the probes that were done there. And then with that, it's kind of difficult to put exact volume of what's going to actually transfer because you don't know where it's actually going to meander and everything. So just some initial surveys and tests that we did just to get an idea, a scale reference for us. So we got the sample late last week, so it's very preliminary. This is kind of what I've been told so far. We'll probably get more information out there when it's available from that staff. So a sample was taken from the lake bed and sent to the lab. And the preliminary results from what I heard was that pollutant levels are well below that expected to adversely affect aquatic life. These are experts that provided this information. And that the phosphorus levels were well below average in western Wisconsin flowages and lower than the sediment that associated with the stormwater that may go into Lake Malibu. So that's kind of information that I've received right now. Numbers and stuff, we might be getting that a little later. It's just preliminary stuff. So as part of the drawdown, we are going to be investigating feasibility for a dredge. Dredging is pretty costly, so we're going to find if we can talk to a local contractor, see if they have the equipment available, see if they can reach over there, if it's going to be a mechanical dredge, if they're going to use the clamshell. That's what's in the picture right here. And that's going to take place during the initial drawdown, when the pool is still at that, around the area of that 22-foot sill. So if it's feasible, we would try to remove as much sediment as we can, and then after that's done, then we complete the full drawdown. But again, there's a lot of factors that play into this dredge, and we'll try to do everything we can. Another way that we're looking at are grade control structures and check dams. So a grade control structure would be any sort of riprap or fabric placement, that can be placed in the lake bed. For right now, I think the main target is to be the main channel because that's where the most sediment is going to cut and transport. So we can put that fabric or riprap on the meanders and just prevent that sediment from being disturbed and transported. Check dams, I have a couple pictures of these. I'll show you in a little bit. But check dams are basically a pile of rocks. It's a dam. They create these small pools, and in these pools, they will kind of capture that water, and that's where the sediment's going to settle out. The size of those are going to be based on site conditions, like how high they're going to be, how spread out they're going to be. It's just an alternative that we're going to look at. So, and then the check dams, since you need heavy equipment for the rock, I think could be about 12-inch rock, so they need heavy equipment. So the lake bed's obviously going to be pretty wet, so we may have to wait for that to dry out just to even access it. So here's kind of what the grade control structure I was looking at. Again, targeting the stream there, just to prevent from the erosion and from the sediment detaching there. And these are those check dams. So you see it's just a series of rock structures that'll create those pools so that the coarser sediment can settle out. Here's kind of the areas that we were kind of targeting. There's the upper portion of the impoundment, because that's initially where, when you draw this down, that's where the head cutting is going to start. So we're going to try, once that's accessible, we're going to try to reach the channel in that area and then install those grade control structures and check dams.
Peter, can you grab one of those lights behind you to make it a little easier to see this? There's lights right now. Just, yeah.
How's that?
Do you want me to show you those other pictures again, or like there's the check dams again and grade control. And then there's also a possibility of doing it downstream, but again, that's might not be accessible with heavy equipment because there is a steep slope there, so we'd have to see if it's even accessible with that heavy equipment and install those, but that would help out with the drawdown. Another option is a silt curtain or turbidity barrier. So as you can see, it's basically just a floating mesh-like material that you could put in the downstream channel, and it will kind of capture the finer sediment. It won't capture all of it, but it will capture the suspended sediment that's in the water. Some of the problems with these is that if you're getting higher flows, they might not stay put, and there's regular maintenance, so you have to clean them out. You know, it's the mesh-like material, so.
That goes below the dam?
That could, yeah, you can put that below. That's kind of where we're looking right now. And then the last thing is that we're going to be doing some seeding efforts. Once the lake bed is accessible, we're going to have some staff out there to plant some vegetation. What I've heard is like an oats kind of thing. I think they're fast growing. We'll talk with our staff to see what kind of vegetation grows quick on that lake bed, just to make sure that we have that coverage and that the sediment's not being disturbed if we get a rainfall event. There will also be a lot of natural vegetation that establishes too. I've heard, you know, they have seed in there and that will go pretty quick. So again, once that's accessible, that's one of the efforts that we'll do. So. And I think that's it for me. So thanks, guys. And I'm gonna hand it off to Aaron here.
Okay, hold on 1 second while I get PowerPoint switched over. Okay. Again, I'm Aaron Mason, the park manager. I'm just going to talk to you briefly a little bit of how this drawdown is going to affect the recreational use of the park. For the most part, you know, the park is still going to be fully open. We're still going to have a lot of visitors that are going to be using the park, and you know, there are going to be some things that will be impacted, but there'll be a lot of things that'll be kind of operating as normal. So. Obviously the park is heavily used. We have over 700,000 visitors a year. It is definitely, you know, the lake is a big part of that. So, but impacted by the drawdown, the swimming beach will be closed once we start the drawdown about June 1st. The beach will probably only have a few days before it's going to be high and dry. So the swimming beach will be closed, and once the once the water is really starting to go down, we'll have to close the beach completely to swimming. Boating, the boat launch will be closed about the same time as the beach. At least our main part of our boat launch, once the water level drops past the bottom of the approach, I guess, at the boat launch, it's going to be really difficult and possibly unsafe for people to try to access it until things dry out a little bit. The fishing certainly will be impacted. Doesn't mean that you can't still fish in the basin or fish in the river, but it certainly will be impacted. It'll be a harder situation. Possibly as things dry out, the fishing, the pool level that still remains during that stage drawdown could be used for fishing, but obviously it's going to be different than what it is now. Upstream fishing probably won't be impacted, but downstream fishing, there's certainly, as that water level drops and we're releasing water out of the dam, it's expected that a lot of the fish that are inside the lake right now are going to follow that water downstream. So they're going to be, the stream down below the dam is obviously going to have more fish, crappies, bluegills, bass, northern, that kind of stuff. And probably eventually Lake Malibu is going to have a lot more crappies, bluegills, bass and northern as well. So so that certainly, I guess, will be a little bit of a change in things. Recreational activities that will continue as normal. All our campgrounds are still going to be open, so we're going to operate as normal as far as camping. Hiking trails will still remain the same. Picnic areas are all open, with the exception of the little part where the construction project is going on right now. If you've been into the park, we're replacing the old bathhouse building, so that building is getting replaced. So there's a construction area that's blocked off right now, but the main picnic area is still open. Playgrounds are all open. The waterfalls, a lot of people ask, how is the drawdown going to affect the waterfall? It's not going to have any effect. That's upstream. The waterfall, the river is still going to flow through the waterfall just like normal. So that's going to, obviously the waterfall is a big part of the attraction of the park. A lot of people come out to see that. That's going to be unchanged for the most part. Upstream fishing should be really unaffected. It's most likely will be the trout fishing will be up there just like it is today. So winter activities, cross-country ski trails, snowshoeing, all those kind of trails, that kind of stuff. Ice fishing obviously will be impacted, but the trail activities should really remain the same. Kind of an idea what things might look like for a little while. So this is a post drawdown lake bed of when they drew down the mill pond upstream last time. So as you can kind of see, obviously you're going to see a lot of mud for a little while as that channel gets cut, and that's once things get dried down, we're going to tackle those efforts as far as the seeding and those kind of things. This was pretty much immediately after the drawdown, and it does not take very long for stuff to green up pretty fast. So we'll want to probably try to get some seed on there as quickly as possible to slow any erosion from rain events, and also just to make it look a little bit nicer, I guess, as far as getting a nice green growth out there. Let's see here. I guess to look specifically, you can kind of see what the dam. This was when the dam blew out in '34. What it kind of looked like out in front there, and that's when it was drawn down back in '80s in front of the dam. There is a partial pool out in front of there, and I guess it's unknown exactly what the pool looked like when it gets down the bottom of the sill. A lot of those unknowns are still out there, but I guess if you can kind of see the photo there, there's going to be a lot of exposed concrete on the dam for a while until we, I guess, tackle those other sediment removal and that kind of thing. So I guess I'll pass off to Gordon.
Sure.
You want to sit up there?
Yeah, you can leave that photo.
Do you want
The
anything?
first picture was the best.
The first picture?
Yeah. No, you can leave that one, or
You want that
actually, you could move down to that.
Oh, okay.
The one of that pier.
That one?
No, keep going. Keep going. There you go. There was. I'll talk about this a little bit more in a minute. Anyway, my name is Gordon Stinson, and my part in this, as I mentioned in the last public meeting we have, that I'm the project engineer for lands and facilities that's assigned to this dam project. And where this comes from is that when parks or forestry or wildlife or whatever, when they get involved in something that goes beyond their regular maintenance and operation and starts to get more complex and convoluted, then an individual such as myself is assigned to help them work through this project. And we work under the auspices of the chief engineer, then the section chief in Madison. And for my part, I'm going to try and kind of bring you through how we got to where we are now, and then talk to you a little bit about the feasibility study. The feasibility study, by the way, we put together a public release, which is the last page in your handout here. And if you haven't read it yet, you can certainly read it at home, and I will go through that with you as I move along here. The department did an inspection in 2011, and a number of issues were brought out at that time. what we did not have the capability to do in that inspection was to get a really close look at some of the features of the dam because of the dangers involved in accessing those areas. So we moved forward with that and hired a consulting engineering firm with specialized skills and equipment and got a much closer, better look, climbed the gates, did a dive inspection up and downstream and all this kind of stuff. At the end of the day, the question still remained, why don't these gates work? So we kept after that, and ultimately what we came to discover is that it wasn't something inherent in the gate mechanism per se, but rather the foundation of the dam. We started off looking at this feasibility study in terms of a deficiency in capacity. We could not meet the flow with the design of the dam. You have to remember, this design was originally a mill dam, a glorified mill dam, eventually a power dam, but it was built to meet that purpose, not a flood control dam or anything like that. So as we entered into this feasibility study, we thought we were looking at capacity issues and then fix the gates. And then as this moved forward, we realized that the structural condition of this dam was in dire need of being addressed. So the first 8 alternatives that came through this analysis, none of those even addressed a full replacement. They were put gates here, 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 here. Well, what you see here, this is a pier in front of the fixed crest spillway. And that pier, that fixed crest spillway is partially founded on an old timber crib. And they say, well, timber underwater, it's timeless timber. Well, you can see here where there was timber. And there is no more. So, and right here you can see the top of rubble. So there's almost 10 feet of rubble in front of here. And now, this is a 1979 photo. So now there's a fine layer of silt over the top of this. So it's literally impossible without spending a lot of money to get in there, dig that material out, get a better look at this. And does that tell us anything that we don't already know? Likely not. So what it does tell us is that for the intents and purposes of the original design of the dam, it was probably okay. But when we look at moving forward, saying we're going to have to spend multiples of $1 million to address gated spillway capacity or even bona fide stable spillway capacity, enhanced spillway capacity, we can't afford to take the risk of building it on something unknown. So that's where this feasibility study then took a different turn, and we threw out the first 8 alternatives and came up with a set of criteria that I'll read you later, that then we move forward with the next set of alternatives. In fact, one last thing I wanted to address, and maybe I'll read the first paragraph of this, and then I'll address a question that came out of, I watched a tape of Dan's presentation to Agnes Committee, and one of the neighbors, Jim Laird, had a question, and it really bothered me that he had that question. And so I'll address that in the context of this first paragraph. Anyway, it reads, the feasibility study was commissioned to propose preliminary design solutions and costs to address the spillway capacity and structural integrity of the Little Falls Dam at Willow River State Park. It is a technical document that contains a considerable amount of information regarding the dam. Recent inspections from 2011 to 2014, which included climbing into gate bays and diving up and downstream, resulted in a list of dam deficiencies that need to be addressed for safety and compliance. A team of 10 engineers from the state of Wisconsin and a private consulting firm, Ayers & Associates, has evaluated the historical record, present condition, and supporting inspections and documents. A number of alternatives are presented that address the concerns about the dam. This team of 10 engineers, where this comes from, in Jim's comment, he said, well, gosh, I've talked to Bill Sturdivant, the state dam safety engineer, and I see Ayers and Associates, and it's like, who's on first? Well, suffice it to say that when parks made the decision to start moving forward with the remedy of this dam, then I was kind of the last one in line that didn't step back and say, you know, who's volunteering for this? So I was assigned this project. So I've been working with the park staff all through this and directly coordinating all of these pieces of the engineering puzzle to make sure that what we got in terms of a study and the benefit of the knowledge of the staff members we have probably of the 10 engineers, 7 are in state service, and of that 7, there's easily a combined total of more than 50 years of dam safety experience, of which I've got about 11 myself prior to being a lands and facilities engineer. So we wanted to make sure that we got a good final product. And trust me when I say that the final product that we do have released did not get out the door without a lot of scrutiny, without a lot of correction, and we wanted to make sure that what was in there was thorough, complete, and correct to the best that we could provide it to you and ourselves and our administrators for making the decisions. I'll carry on and read the rest of this, and then I guess I'll turn it over to the next person. The Little Falls Dam, is a large high-hazard dam located in the park. From left to right, looking downstream, there's a 117-foot multiple arch buttress section, 22-foot wide by 12-foot tall Tanger gate, 43-foot wide powerhouse section. Incidentally, the powerhouse section and the fixed crest spillway and the gated section in between, that's the older half of the dam. And that contains the most problems and the most unknowns. So when we talked about how are we going to address fixing this, part of that solution earlier on was to lop the top half of this stuff off and put gates here, gates there, gates everywhere, and we finally threw that stuff out the window and said that's just not going to work. Anyway, let's see, and a 72-foot concrete OG overflow spillway. The dam has structural problems and insufficient flood flow capacity. The dam is high hazard because residential land use downstream could be flooded in a dam failure and potentially cause loss of life. The loss of life is the lead criteria for assigning a high hazard rating. It has nothing to do with the condition of the dam, but if there's a potential for loss of life, that establishes that high hazard criteria. The current issues with the Little Falls Dam include inadequate spillway capacity, 3 of 4 gates in poor condition, 2 of the 4 completely inoperable. Seepage along the multiple arch buttress section indicating poor foundation. Seepage at the powerhouse and gate 2 indicating structural movement and poor foundation. OG spillway being the oldest section of the dam. It can't be adequately inspected at full pool, and it's built on a questionable timber crib foundation, experiencing uncontrolled seepage at the contact point between the right abutment and the bedrock, indicating a possible foundation problem and continually deteriorating probable failure point. What we mean by that 10-mile-long sentence is if you look across the dam and you see that sandstone face, you will see water seeping out of there constantly. And in the wintertime, you'll see the icicles and all that stuff. Gradually, through the freeze-thaw cycles, that sandstone wall is creeping back. We expect to see something come through there because it's not an impervious rock structure. However, what we've seen in past failure modes, when I was the dam safety engineer assigned to Vernon County when we had the flooding in 2007, is water seeps out and then it just keeps working itself back upstream. So eventually there's a potential that right abutment could just work its way back right up around the stream around the end of the dam. There's already been a significant repair to that abutment in the early 1990s, and brought out in the feasibility study in the history of this, there are a number of repairs and rehabilitations that have been done over the years. Probably the most prominent, the one in 1981. Anyway, the purpose of the feasibility study is to provide alternatives to address the Little Falls Dam based on these 5 criteria: to address the spillway capacity, to provide structural integrity, and to me, those two go hand in hand, to maintain the current reservoir pool at normal pool elevation, to provide a cold water draw for fish habitat, and to address having little or no need for active operation. The parks guys kind of have their hands full. And they'd rather do just about anything, including to probably take a beating than go operate the dam. And there's also some question that we know that the dam can be operated in such a mode to cause flooding downstream, even in its current configuration. So we're trying to find a balance there in some of our design alternatives to take that out of the equation if we can. There are 8 alternatives that are addressed in that feasibility study. 2 of the alternatives are for full dam replacement. 5 of the alternatives are for partial replacement with varying sizes, numbers, and types of gates. And 1 alternative is for dam removal and restoration of the stream corridor. The preliminary cost estimates included in the feasibility study are for the dam structure work only and do not include additional costs such as road reconstruction. We figure that that can run anywhere up to, I think, somewhere between $500,000 and $2 million, depending on the road base and the conditions and how bad it gets tore up. Sediment management, again, that's an unknown at this point, the costs affiliated with that. The Department of Facility Development fees and any post-project costs, including but not limited to lake bed and river channel stabilization, fish habitat, or environmental reestablishment. Total budget, depending on the chosen alternative, could range from $2.5 to over $15 million. So this could be a pretty big ticket item for all of us. And with that, I'll segue into Ben's presentation with this final paragraph, is that the DNR will use all available inspections, studies, historical information, economic impact studies, stakeholder and public input, and natural resource program technical information to develop a strategic analysis paper which will be used to provide information to the DNR administration when determining the solution for the dam. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions later.
Thanks, Gordon. Hi, everyone. I'm not going to use a microphone. Can everyone hear me okay? Excellent. So my name's Ben Berge, and I'm a district supervisor with the Park and Recs program. And what that means is I work over the northwest portion of the state of Wisconsin, 32 counties to be exact, on recreation issues in our state parks and our state trails. And for the last portion of our presentation, before we open this up and start to address questions, Missy Van Landen and I are going to talk about where do we move from here forward. So you've heard a lot tonight about how we got here, the science behind that, the research that's been done, the studies. I'm going to talk about what we're going to do over the course of the next several months that will culminate in a strategic alternative analysis paper that we hope to complete this fall. So I'm going to talk about that process, how you folks will be invited to be part of that, and then that'll culminate basically in a decision by the department on what we're going to do based on the alternatives for the dam. When I'm done with that, Missy is going to talk about, okay, we have a decision's been made, what we're going to do with the dam. And those three alternatives, as Gordon mentioned, were repair the dam, replace the dam, or remove the dam and restore the stream bed. So once a decision is made, Missy is going to talk about that section. So I'm going to talk about how we're going to provide information to the department to make a decision, to the agency. Missy's going to talk about, okay, we have a decision, how are we going to implement that decision? What will you actually see based on the alternative out on the landscape? So Gordon mentioned that we have basically we have 8 alternatives, but you can break those down to basically 3, as I mentioned. Okay, repair the dam, so not a complete rebuild, but repair the sections that are compromised and also address the spillway. The other alternative would be completely replace the structure, so remove what's there, completely replace it. And then the third would be remove the structure and restore a stream bed type landscape. So what are we going to do? We call the paper a strategic alternative analysis. So what we're going to do is take each one of those options, those alternatives, and we'll further develop those. What we have today basically is a as an engineering look at, okay, what would it mean to repair? What would it mean to replace? We have some of that engineering documented on what that would mean. Where Parks comes into this now, and some of our planners within the agency is, okay, what does that mean to the people that use the property? What does that mean to our neighbors? What does that mean to local business? What does it mean to business 45 miles down the road? What does that mean to the person that uses the park, that kayaks, that camps? Those are the things we're going to look at. That being said, so one of the big things we'll look at is obviously the impacts on local economy. And we've actually had some work done in the last few years. The University of Wisconsin put out a report on the economic impacts of Wisconsin state parks. And you folks can go online. In fact, I think maybe it would be a good thing just to, we'll get it on the website so you can look at that. And we actually broke things down by regions across the state. I should say the university broke down some of the money and the impact Wisconsin state parks have on local communities and local business and greater business in totality. So I'm not sure what the radius was on local, but let's say a visitor to the park comes here from Milwaukee. So they're going to spend money on the way to get here, right? They're going to stop at the gas station. They're going to buy some food. They may stay overnight if they have little kids like me because they can't make it this far in one day. And they're going to spend some money along the way. When they get here, they're going to spend some money too. They're going to spend money at the park. They're going to, pay the fees to use the park. But they're going to go to restaurants. They're going to go down to the gas station. They might go spend some money in some local businesses. So that being said, the University of Wisconsin's paper from 2013 reports that to the local economy here, in the immediate area here, there is, make sure I tell you right, over $4.8 million spent locally per year due to Willow River State Park and the people that it draws in. On a regional-wide basis, that number climbs to about 29.7 million. And that's direct impact locally and non-locally that people spend because they're coming to Willow River to recreate. So that's money they're buying, they're buying campers, they're buying vehicles, they're buying tents, they're buying gas, food, you name it. So obviously one of our goals is we see ourselves as a partner in the community. Okay, we partner with folks. We're just as much, we hope you feel the same about us, that we're an integral part of the local economy. State parks moving forward, in the past and moving forward, we want to continue to be a part of that. Our goal is not to change those numbers or have any negative impact on local economy, obviously. As Aaron mentioned, we have about 700,000 visitors per year. I believe the numbers that were used a few years ago were a little bit lower than that, but all in all, the average expenditure per day when someone's visiting the park, if we take that number of total spent divided by visitors, it ends up being just shy of $50 per visitor per day is pumped into the local economy. So it's about $48. We'll get that study. That study's out there already. If you Google it, you can Google Wisconsin State Parks Economic Study and get some of those numbers. Quite interesting to look at. We break it down in regions, recreation, and then also by property. I should say the university does. So that affects the local economy. Also, obviously, an economic impact of the park. That impoundment has recreation value that draws people in, that has an economic value to us. Obviously, the amount of people that come into the state park, buy park stickers, pay for camping passes, etc. That's another thing that we need to look at. Willow River historically has been a very, profitable park for the state park system. We actually net a positive gain at Willow River State Park. Okay, that's a good thing. And a compliment to Aaron for running an efficient program. One of the other things, obviously, economics is the part we're going to look at. We're going to look at recreation, as I mentioned. With each alternative, we're going to weigh the pros and cons, increases, decreases, new opportunities that are taken away. So when you talk about recreation, each alternative, recreation, will be discussed. Will we continue to provide kayaking? Okay. Will we continue to provide canoe opportunity? That'll be weighed against each alternative. Some obviously may be created under certain alternatives. Some may be eliminated under certain alternatives. And those are the things that we'll look at and we'll go into this report. The other thing that was mentioned earlier was looking at all the resource impacts of the natural resources. Each alternative obviously will have an impact on the natural resources. Is it fish, birds, frogs, you name it, it'll have an impact. Those are the types of natural resource things we'll look at. And our staff has started, our technical experts in those areas have started to look at that. That information we're going to be gathering and will go into this document. Obviously, the public, our partners, very important. So through this process, we kind of talk about what those next steps may be, or moving forward, I guess what you folks can expect as the season progresses here as we get into summer. We hope to get this information collected. So do the data collection. Well, you're going to use, we hope to do some surveys of the property. We're looking at doing some media blasts, some outreach to, we have information on our campers. We can reach out to those folks. We want to reach out to the people at the property. What brings you here? What do you like about Willow River State Park? We need to put a value, if you will, on the impoundment or the lack thereof. And that would be based on the alternative. So, as we move through this study and gather data and start to put together this report, we are going to engage you, the public, again, and get your input on what's in that report. Your thought process, I guess, on what's in there. Did we miss something? Is there something there we completely missed? Is there something there that maybe someone, individual group, what have you, may be able to add? So during that process, which is very similar to our master planning process, the public gets to provide input on that document. And we are going to invite you folks back again at that stage to make sure you have input into that document. So public input will be part of that document as we move it to the administration. So our hope is to have this paper put together, a strategic alternative analysis, taking those three basic alternatives, repair, replace, remove, develop those further on concerns that all of you here I'm sure have. Obviously we have as well, we all share that. And provide that to the Department of Natural Resources for the agency to make a decision on the future of the Little Falls Dam. We hope for that to be this fall, late fall. And at that, I will let Missy take it from there.
I am Missy Van Landet, and I am the Capital Development Coordinator for State Parks. So I travel all over the state, and I do capital development coordination. I work for Peter, who was talking up here before. So basically what I do is help coordinate the budget and the process for facility development and repair projects in our state parks. And that includes this dam. So as part of that, I get to handle the money, and I get to help coordinate the process with the Department of Administration, with Gordy and our other counterparts. I also happen to be from River Falls, so I'm pretty invested in this area. I grew up here. I moved to Madison for school and happen to stay there and work there now, but obviously get here quite a bit and grew up going to Willow River State Park. So I know the area well, have done a lot of recreation there, and just enjoy the property in general. So let me talk a little bit about the budget piece of it, and then the actual, what's gonna happen next. I'm actually gonna talk about the physical piece, what you'll kind of see as we move through the subsequent years. And Ben talked a little bit about, okay, so we're gonna hopefully get to some kind of decision late fall, early winter from the administration, and then what happens? From there, we hope to have another public meeting to tell you what happened. What was the decision that was made, and what impact does that have on the property and on the dam? From there, this process that I'll lay out for you is actually the same no matter which alternative is chosen. The repair, the full restoration or full replacement, and then the removal. So just keep that in mind, and don't necessarily attach some of the words I'm saying to any one of those alternatives. The process is the same. So what do we do then? Well, we re-engage Gordy and we re-engage our consultants, and what they need to do then is take the chosen alternative and they need to develop a design and a budget for it. And what we call that is our 35% design phase. So they're designing 35% of the project. They'll take that alternative, they'll give us a really good budget number and a preliminary design, and what we'll do then is we'll take that to the Department of Administration and to our legislators that are sitting on the State Building Commission. We'll go to them and we'll say, this is what we want to do, this is why we want to do it, and this is the money that we need to do it. Hopefully they'll approve that. And then from there, they'll say, okay, we're going to give you the money you asked for, now you can go ahead and continue and design. So from there, we'll go back to our consultants and say, okay, we want you to design fully up to bid documents for the chosen alternative. That may take anywhere from 6 months to a year or longer, depending on the complexity of the alternative chosen. From there, we'll simply go to bid. We'll bid the project out. We'll do the contracting, and then we anticipate anywhere, again, from 6 months to 1 to 2 years of construction, depending on the complexity of the project. So you can see this gets out there as we move through all of these steps. And it can be, 2, 3 years or so down the road. So again, it's a long process, a lot of work throughout the entire process, but it's the process that all state projects follow. This dam is not unique. Going to that 35% in the building commission phase is something that every single project over a certain dollar threshold goes through. And like Gordon said, the chosen solution might be anywhere from $2.5, $3 million upwards of over 15 when it's all said and done. So a lot of that process changes a little bit depending on which dollar threshold you start to cover. So I know there's been a lot of questions about, well, what about the $3 million now? What are we going to do with that now? Do we have that? Is it in the bank? What's going on with that? So let me give you a little snippet of the budget process. I didn't do a PowerPoint because it would be really boring with a lot of numbers and a lot of words. And it is a complex process, so if you do have questions at the end, please feel free to ask me to clarify. But right now, we submit projects 2 years in advance of when a budget comes out. So the dam project was submitted in 2013 for this 2015-2017 biennium. So if you start to lay out all those dates, that was actually before the dive study, but after the inspections, and before the feasibility study. So we put this project in knowing that we had issues with the dam. We knew some of the issues that we had. We thought that they could be handled with repairs. And the original project that was put in was simply to do repairs on the dam. It was not to address the spillway, which we thought we could do after we did the repairs, that they could be kind of in concert. So the $3 million was originally for the repairs. The budget went in, it went over to DOA, the Department of Administration, it went over to the State Building Commission, and that's the approval that many of you have seen thus far. It just went in the last 2 months to the State Building Commission to be approved, to be included in the 15-17 budget. They approved it. Now the next step in that process, that doesn't mean that we actually have the money in the bank. The State Building Commission just said, yep, we think you should have that money. So now what happens is the Joint Finance Committee needs to vote on that, and they need to decide whether or not they still want to keep that into the capital development budget. And then from there, if they do vote on that, which is yet to happen, from there, then the governor can still either keep that in the budget or take it out of the budget. So it's not all said and done that we have that $3 million yet. Not until the official 2015-2017 capital budget is officially passed and signed by the governor do we have that money. Do we think it's likely we'll get it if it already passed Building Commission? Likely, but we haven't gone through all the steps yet. So it's not officially in our pocket. But that being said, we know a lot more about the dam now. We did not have the opportunity to go back and change the scope of work or update the budget numbers. So we were kind of stuck with this $3 million. So what can we do with it? Well, we don't want to put good money after bad, so we're not going to go in and fix gates because we know it won't do anything. We know we can't fix them. Like Gordon was saying, it's not good to throw in a new gate and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars when you don't know that the foundation is good underneath it. So what do we plan on spending it on? We plan on spending it on safety, first and foremost. So when we do the drawdown, we may need signage, we may need gates, we may need fencing. So we're planning on spending it on that. We'll plan on spending it on sediment management, some of the things that Mike talked about with the check dams, dredging, things like that. So we'll spend it on what we need to stabilize the area and to make the area safe and to do sediment management. That's our intention. But with that whole process of going through 35% and going to building commission, that process also applies to that $3 million. So we actually have to go through that even before we go through the whole process with the chosen alternative. So once we know exactly what we need to do for sediment management, we'll get that scope of work together, and we'll have to go back to the building commission and tell them this is exactly what we want to spend the $3 million on. We need your approval and authority to go ahead and do that. So we'll look to be doing that over the next 6 to 9 months once we know exactly how to spend that $3 million. We may very well end up rolling that into the overall cost. When we say that the dam cost total is $2.5 million to $15 million, that $3 million is included in there. So we include some of that initial safety and sediment management in there. But specifically, until we do the drawdown and until we know how the impoundment and the sediment behaves and what exactly happens, we don't know exactly how we're going to spend that $3 million. So we can't go in and ask for that authority. And the other key piece of that $3 million is some of those design and management funds. We've already taken $110,000 out to spend on our consultants, to be looking at the dam, to be coming up with these alternatives. And so part of that $3 million will again go towards that 35% and engaging them to get to that level, to be their design costs, to get to that level on the chosen alternative. So that $3 million is three things. It's safety, it's sediment management, and it's design and consultation. Okay, I think that's all I have for now. I see a lot of puzzling looks on your faces, so I'll sit down and let Peter handle some of the questions.
I want to thank our panel. I think they did an absolutely wonderful job. Our goal was to try to present information in an hour or less, and I think they fell right in that. So I hope you agree with me that they presented a lot of complex information, but they presented it concisely. They worked hard to do that, so I want to thank all of you for your work on that. Appreciate that very much. But now it's your turn. So we're going to have, just before I take any questions, a couple rules of order here. We would like, as Dan mentioned, written comments because they're for the record. It really helps us. So Paul and I will walk around during questions that we take and pick up your written ones. So we can present them up front here. If you don't want to raise your hand, we can read them outright and that'd be really easy for you. So if you take a minute to do that, we'd appreciate that. And then we'll just probably grab a microphone and go around and ask folks to present their questions to us. The way I'm going to do this is I'll call, you raise your hand, I'll call you out, you get the question. Dan, maybe you can help decide who might be best to answer that. That would be great.
And that won't be me, Peter, on any of them.
I didn't say you'd answer them.
Okay.
Are we allowed only one question at a time, or if we have multiple, what would you like to do?
We're hoping to, although it doesn't look like we're getting many written ones, we're hoping that we can kind of consolidate them and
I'll forget my question.
Okay, we do have our guests here tonight, the local cable TV. They're going to try to pick up the questions, so that's why I'm going to use the microphone. I think we have a lady over here that was first, if she wants to go.
I also
Okay, you pass the chair to somebody else, so we'll take the gentleman here first.
Hold on, if I can make one exception, Pete, I have a hard time keeping my voice down talking about this. Is it okay if I stand up and greet everybody?
Sure.
All right. My name is Jim Thomas.
Are you, wait a minute, Jim.
Sure.
Are you asking us a question?
I am.
Or are you
I'm
wanting
asking
to
questions.
make a statement
Nope,
to the group?
I just want everybody to know who I am. I'm going to ask you questions, but I
Okay.
want them to know what it's being based on.
It's
And I
good
want
because
to-
I don't want them to feel that
No.
this is a hearing.
No, it's not at all. I've just been doing too much. I wouldn't want to do that.
An inquisition,
No.
or there's this
No.
back and forth.
And I'm going to keep these really brief and to the point. I'll skip my name. My name is Jim Thomas. We can't turn back the hands of time, obviously. And if I shed a tear, I apologize in advance. Ben, a couple quotes. We are going to look at, I heard 10 times, we're going to be drawing down a body of water in 3 weeks. I think that we are going to look at it, should have happened 2 years ago, but I'll just say that. Dan, I just have one question, and I know that we can't wait any longer on this because lives are in jeopardy. Why are they more in jeopardy today than they were 3 years ago when we knew this? And how, with all of the reports we have, can they say that when the water would flow directly over the Lake Malibu Dam and actually, in a worst case, if the dam blew out, would not reach more than 2.5 to 3 feet over Pearl's Point? In a worst case scenario, can they say lives are at stake?
It's a matter, not that lives are there at the time. You have to assume that these residents are fully occupied. I mean, you always go worst case scenario when you're trying to assess risk, okay? And you're right. Should the department have drained this lake back in 2013? Sure. We need to get some ducks in a row within the department before we move forward. Budget being one of them, making sure that the dam safety program and the Parks Department agreed that there was the data that we had was accurate. So yeah, should it be empty right now? Probably. I cut and dry.
No, let's go.
But you're right. There's no sense in looking back because it doesn't solve the issue today and how we move forward.
My biggest concern that I have right now is that Marty England Fisheries does not have the time to deal with the ecosystem that's going to be affected. These fish are going to flow at 6 inches a day through the dam, end up in the Willow River or in Lake Malibu and die. I mean, it's a given.
Very well could be.
So we are not going to have an increased fish. We're going to have an increase of stinking fish. Is there any way to address this?
I think that's another one of those dynamic issues that you can say we're going to have nothing but dead fish. You don't know that.
Nope.
We don't know that. But I tell you, as you've heard tonight, we're committed to being on site, to monitoring, to doing what it takes to address the issues that do come up. That's the best I can give you, Jim.
No, I appreciate that.
We don't control.
But it's not going to
those
happen.
things.
There is nothing scheduled for relocation of the fish at this time.
No,
Okay.
it's just not feasible.
Sounds good. That's perfect. My next question would be to Gordon, and you had mentioned different alternatives for silt management. Was hydraulically pumping one that you've even considered?
That was kind of based off of full pool. We already knew that to hydraulically dredge you need more of a pool than what we're doing in the initial stage. So we know the drawdown's going to occur June 1st. So I don't think we would be able to come up with the budget or time to do that as of right now.
Was a LIDAR bathymetric study not done while the lake was frozen last winter?
I'll address that.
Mike, if you gentlemen could just stand up when you're talking, the people in the back can probably hear you easier.
And if I'm going down the wrong path, just raise your hand. I don't want to take all the time away from anybody, but I have some specific questions, and I do.
We do want to let everybody talk.
Right.
So if we
And I'll
can
be
take
brief.
one more, then we can
Just
then
three
move
more.
on. You can get back
Sure.
in line, those kind of things.
If I could take anybody
I
else's
just
5
don't want
minutes,
people
I'd
to
jump
think
right
that you're
in.
dominating, Jim, because you're not dominating.
No.
Or maybe you are.
Well,
But
I'm probably the
we
most
want to make sure
informed
that questions
person.
are getting answered, but we want to make sure everybody's got an
We will.
opportunity.
We will.
Okay.
Thank you very much for jumping in. The LIDAR report.
LiDAR is light detection and ranging. That's how the county has collected their detailed topographic data. Bathymetric survey is not accomplished by those means because it doesn't penetrate the surface of the water. Myself, Aaron, who volunteered some of his own equipment but wouldn't let the engineers use it, and another engineer also involved in this process in Sheboygan, former dam safety engineer Brent Bender, and also in my land and facilities construction group. We did some sediment probing and depth checking in the first 1,000 feet upstream from the dam last winter. The mechanism that we used was essentially a range pole to probe the depth, and we actually lost a pole, so there's an orange and white candy cane striped pole out there somewhere that I won't tell you that you'll see soon enough when we start running the dam down. And then we utilized, used a weighted bottle to get on and determine the sediment top, and we cross-referenced that with a Vexlar and found out that we could much more quickly gather our data with the transducer, the Vexlar. But in terms of, did we determine then the volume of sediment by that? Is that where this question was going? Well, yes and no. What we did, we determined an upper and a lower surface, if you will, and determined the volume of that sandwich slice. What we don't know then is because that the top of the sediment is diffuse and the sediment itself is not compact and solid, we couldn't tell you exactly what kind of a final solid volume would come out of that for a fixed amount of sediment.
So the bathymetric study that I believe was done, though, was
You
correct.
just talked about it.
I know, but it's not being, it's truly, you are using poles, sticking
Right,
it,
this-
that's how
yeah.
you're doing it. And
Right.
that's how you're creating your estimate of silt at this point. Okay.
Yes.
That's
yes.
cool, that's cool, that's what I need to know.
Yes, we attempted to utilize the GPS survey equipment,
Right.
and we got caught in a shadow, could not gather data, so we said, all right, let's move to Plan B. So I had a recreational grade GPS, which uses a different antenna capability. So I captured waypoints, and so we were able to get a location, but we're looking at plus or minus 30 feet with that instrument rather than plus or minus 3 centimeters.
And I think we get that your concern is sediment in Lake Malibu, and that's our concern too. We share that concern?
Yeah, well, actually, what my real concern is more so than Lake Malibu, but we've been working, where the tiers are gonna come in, is we've been working with DNR, with Buzz Sorgi, with Kyle, everybody for a long time, trying to keep the water qualities up. It's our goal to protect these bodies of water so that everybody can enjoy them. But we put together a TMDL plan, which is total mass daily load of phosphorus that passes through our body of water. And there is an implementation plan that was put on hold for approval. So that is not written in stone, but there is one that is approved by the EPA for the St. Croix River Basin.
Right.
And right now there is a concern that exists that if the total mass daily load of phosphorus increases over an amount that is already part of an approved plan in the St. Croix River, there is a federal EPA problem. That is why I think, and what Missy said, I agree, silt management is important, but not over the next 6 to 9 months. It needed to be over the last 6 to 9 months.
We're not going to change that, Jim.
No, I know, but I mean, we
I
have to address
understand.
that.
We are.
But
The
what if it
sediment
goes
management
over the
plan will
EPA
do-
regulations? They're going to shut
We'll
you
deal
down.
with- If it does, we will.
But why can't we deal with it
We're not going to
proactively?
stop.
We
with
could
the
do it
drawdown.
now.
Is
3
that what
weeks.
you're asking for?
Yeah,
It's
no,
not
I'm
gonna
asking to
happen.
deal with the silt.
We
You've
are.
got 3 weeks.
We're doing everything we can to deal with the silt.
I did the work on it. I could get a company in there
This
for
isn't-
$5 a yard
This
to get
isn't
it out
a
of
back
there.
and forth.
I know, it's gonna
I
be too
appreciate
late.
your
The
input.
ecosystem will be destroyed.
I think we'll be okay.
Okay, I'm glad.
I
glad.
appreciate your passion. I've told you
It
that
is,
before.
and that's what it is. It's a
It's,
passion.
it's one that we share.
I hope so. I truly hope
Well,
so.
we're the ones that have been doing this for 20 years. I know you've been on the lake a long time. We're concerned with Lake Malibu. We're done doing the sampling. I think we have the tools in place to address those things if we see them.
I apologize. I'll forego my next 3 questions and let somebody else take the floor.
Can I just ask her to clarify something? In your comments, you said that these items financially were not yet approved, and it would take 6 to however many months for that to be done. How can you draw down without approval for silt management?
We can draw down without approval for silt management because part of it is, let me just stand up and answer that. Part of it is that when we can override some of those processes if we had to in an emergency. The other part of it is that much of the silt management that Mike is talking about is done as part of the drawdown process and is after the drawdown process to manage the river channel. So not all of it is all upfront things or things that we would do before the drawdown. Much of it is after the drawdown. And like Mike indicated, one of the things that we were looking at and are to an extent still looking at is a manual dredge with full pool. Not realistic. It's not. It's not realistic from a financial standpoint, like you clearly pointed out. But the other piece of it is it's considerably expensive, and what it's going to do is it's going to dredge up all that sediment, and it's going to make it mobile, and it's going to put it in there, and it's not going to settle, and it's going to end up going down. So by stirring all of that up, that's not a good decision to make. So as part of it, and what Mike was kind of telling everybody, it's a hybrid approach. We have to open that low-level lake drain. A little bit's going to go down with that as we see if that works, but a lot of it we're going to have to manage after the drawdown. We can't go any longer without doing this drawdown. It's not a risk that anybody at the DNR wants to take, and that's why the administration made that decision. And that what Gordy was talking about and what Dan was talking about with the high hazard dam being loss of life, that's some of the questions in here, by the way, is it still going to be a high hazard dam? Is the new dam going to pass the Q1000, that kind of thing? It will always, as long as there are people and structures downstream, it will always be a high hazard dam, unless it's constructed differently with lower head and those kind of things. If it is put back at the level it is now, it will always be a high hazard dam. We just can't take that risk anymore. So we will manage the sediment to the best of our ability, given the circumstances of the drawdown, and we can't implement any of those sediment management processes until we know how that sediment's going to behave. And we can't know that until we start the drawdown.
Thank you.
And maybe Mike can add some more to that.
So we get a question here. Got a second question? You can go follow? Okay, go ahead.
Is the Little Falls Dam made with washed concrete, with washed sand concrete, or dirty sand concrete? And an example of that is the middle dam was made with dirty sand. The upper dam was made with washed sand, and it cracked, but it wasn't going to pieces, and that's what was wrong with the middle dam. And what I'm getting the impression is the time frame. This is made with dirty sand, and that really is concrete that you really can't do a whole lot with.
I would tend to agree with your opinion. There are a number of samples, core samples, that have been taken from the dam in the investigation that took place in 1979 and 1980. And they did not use the term dirty sand, but rather they thought that the deterioration of the sand, of the concrete, was due to an alkali aggregate reaction, which is kind of a sophisticated chemical thing that concrete starts to come unraveled. And what it really boiled down to when they got to the final skinny on it was that it was material and quality control and placement techniques of the day that were not up to what they are in modern standards. So, and by modern standards, I'd say the difference between the older half of the dam and the newer half. The newer half was washed out and replaced in 1934. That is the multiple arch buttress section. And that's more of a modern design, modern building technique. In the 30s was kind of the heyday of big dam building, so they had a lot better handle on what they were doing. So you are right in that regard.
Another question way in the back, and then sir in the blue, you'll be second. How's that?
I've got just two questions. First, what I'd like to do is just take a poll of everybody here. Of the three alternatives, let's just do a hand count. How many prefer alternative 1 or 2 as opposed to the third one where we don't have a...
I don't want to be rude, but this isn't a kind of a confrontational type. Some people may not be comfortable doing one or the other, and we want this to kind of be a conversation of not asking for the crowd. You can ask us questions, but I don't know that it's fair on their behalf, the people that came out, to do that. I think we'll do some of that, and that'll definitely become clear through the process, but it's kind of hard to say.
What I guess I've heard you say is you want to hear some feedback. And
Individual
I would
feedback.
like to assist
Sure.
with that feedback.
I can appreciate that, but I really don't think it's fair to the people here. We can take a poll, and we can have somebody write on a piece of paper if they want, and they give us that feedback. I don't know that it's fair in this forum to ask people to state their opinion currently. No disrespect intended, it's just not kind of how these...
Okay, can I ask a question now?
Absolutely.
I guess I was disappointed in the presentation where the community that's most impacted and vested, there's no alternative for us to participate in the funding of this. There's foundations in the area. There's potential of individuals. There's potentials of businesses. There's potentials of, yes, maybe even some hydro production, which you're saying that, you know, but I think that this needs to be, if we want it, I think our goal should be to keep the lake there one way or another.
Appreciate
Okay? And when I say that, it's from a perspective of a little 5 or 6 year old grandson or granddaughter who learns how to swim at the beach down there. Okay? I think that's what we have to keep in mind. And I'm disappointed that the people who care about this passionately, I didn't see a venue for us and our foundations and philanthropy and industry having us a voice and being a partner. And I think we need to be partners.
Like, I can address that for you, and that was actually one thing I forgot to talk about, but with the several questions in the pile was, what about funding? What does that funding make up? If we're really talking somewhere between 2.5 and 15 million, what does that mean? That is a whole lot of funding and from a whole lot of different sources. In that second page of the packet that you picked up is frequently asked questions. We answered that a little bit in there. But let me just tell you, once an alternative is chosen, we will be looking at local resources. That means the friends of the park. That means local conservation groups. That means citizens. We'll also be looking at local grants. We'll be looking at state grants. We'll be looking at federal grants. We'll be looking for cash. We'll be looking for borrowed money from the state. We'll be looking at national park money. We'll be looking at land and water conservation funds. We'll be looking at the gamut because, as you know, in these kind of budget times, $15 million is hard to come by. So once an alternative is chosen, you know, again, we'll have a public meeting to let you know what that is, and we'll be able to start moving forward. It's not really fair to ask you to open your checkbook today if we choose an alternative that maybe you don't support. So once an alternative is chosen, we will be more than willing to partner with all sorts of folks who want to help fund this dam. We've actually started looking at, I know Aaron is starting to look at some different grants for helping with the sediment management. So we'll be looking at all sources. It's also very important to the legislature, I should tell you. You know, they don't want to just throw a whole bunch of borrowed money at this. If we can help partner with them and we can show that we've got the community's support, that really helps with obtaining the state-funded dollars.
With all due respect, if you're waiting until the decision has been made, the alternative has been chosen, that is too late.
Well,
that is too late.
It's all part of the process, though. You know, but when we go to, once we make a decision and we go to the legislature, that is when, you know, throughout the course of this process, we'll be looking at some of those, not necessarily specific partnerships like some of the stakeholders, but we've already started looking at some of the federal funds that might be available, some of which are applicable to a removal, some of which are applicable to a full new dam and full restoration. So it just depends. We are looking at those now, but we do have the assumption that we might have to wait a couple years. If the legislature decides not to fund this or fund it to the level that we need, we might not be able to implement that alternative in the timetable that we would like to see. So funding is part of that process, and we can't begin that process until we know what we're doing.
Right, but if
Sir,
there's a
this gentleman
foundation,
is next. If we could just take him, I appreciate it. We want to try to keep some order here because I want everybody to have an opportunity to speak. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I understand this process. I'm not sure that I do. It seems that one of the reasons we can't talk about specific scope of work and budget is that we won't be able to scope a project and choose an alternative until the water's out of there and we can really look at the structure. Is that correct?
I'll address that. No. We're moving forward through the process, and we've got different things happening all at once. We pretty much know everything that we're going to know about this dam today.
Right now.
We are moving forward with the drawdown under the auspices of public safety. That's why the water is going down on the timetable it is. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we brought this feasibility study to fruition, so now we can then couple that with the rest of the parts in the decision-making process. All of the elements that Ben brought to the table, that's how this has to come together in the decision-making process of the agency.
So we're drawing it down right now because we've got a real public safety issue staring at us.
Yes, yes.
And that's because it's a high-hazard dam, and I suspect there's probably hundreds of them in Wisconsin.
Now, as I said in the last public meeting, this is not the call to alarm, but this is more of a way of saying enough is enough.
No, I mean, the reason I said that is I work for the Minnesota Department of Transportation. We have literally thousands of structurally deficient bridges, and that sounds really creepy. But they're fine. And if the taxpayers want to pony up the money, we will fix them at some point. And the minute there is an imminent problem, we just shut them down. Seems to me that if you're looking at the 1,000-year rain event, which this dam can, within like 5 or 10% handle right now the way it's built, given the uncertainty in those kinds of statistics, and given the difficulty in calculating those kinds of probabilities, I have a hard time understanding exactly how high the high hazard is and whether or not I should worry about it at all.
Let me address, first of all, the current capacity of the dam is not that close to the 1,000-year event. On a good day, when all the bells and whistles are working, we can pass about 6,700 CFS. We need to look at 13,000, essentially double, 16,000, approaching triple for the 1,000-year event. That's the regulatory benchmark that we have to meet.
Oh, I thought I read it, we could do like 14,000 out of the 16,000.
No.
In the feasibility study.
No.
Okay, I must have misunderstood that. Okay, so I'm just wondering how it is that this project and this dam and the imminent drawdown got on the menu when this isn't a unique kind of issue for the state of Wisconsin, given the lack of bonding capacity to fix them all at once. Why St. Croix County and why now?
Well, sir, I think it has as much to do with the level of awareness as it does with anything. We understand and we appreciate the situation that we are presently in. We realize that the dam has some structural deficiencies. We realize that there are a large number of unknowns affiliated with those structural deficiencies. You saw the picture of the pier with the missing timeless timber. Mm-hmm. We have no idea, and we cannot reliably predict the performance of the structure given the condition it's in and what we know now. So under the auspices of public safety and due diligence, we're saying, you know what, we cannot withstand that level of risk. We are going to draw this impoundment down. And that's pretty much the end of the story.
Just one real quick follow-up and then I'll sit down. Let's say that the dam were not drawn down. What sort of thing might happen to cause loss of life?
Failure during a flood event, even possibly a sunny day failure. We know that we can operate the dam enough to cause flooding, even without failure. But ultimately, it is failure related, and that's how the code is written.
So you say there's a reasonable possibility that there would be a flood event and people would die.
We say that under the worst case situation, that we have no control over acts of God. In 2007, 2008, we had back-to-back 500-year floods across the river 15 miles. That was 1,000 to 1,500-year flood magnitude. Mm-hmm. And so we have no idea of what's going to happen when. So we act with all prudence and due diligence and with public safety in mind. That's how our whole regulatory program is set up.
Once it's drawn down, those kinds of risks are diminished considerably.
to the extent that we can possibly diminish them given the limitations that we have. There's still a huge chunk of concrete across that river, and it's still going to back up some water in a catastrophic rain event. Could it fail? Yes. Would it, will it pass a lot of it and lower the peak of the hydrograph? Perhaps enough to even prevent a failure. All of these are unknown. We're acting with all due diligence and prudence in mind.
So we really don't have enough information to know how much safety we're buying from the drawdown.
As much as we possibly can.
No, but we don't know what that is.
It's more than we have now.
I know it's more than we have now, but whether or not it's significant, whether or not...
I think the department is not willing to say we didn't do everything we could to prevent or decrease that amount of risk.
I understand that.
If something happens. So I'm
just
not quite sure where
trying to
the...
get some quantitative information.
I don't think we have it by the
Apparently have
numbers.
not got.
Nor do we think we need at this point. Because
You've decided to go ahead and you know it will be somewhat safer.
absolutely, we're doing whatever we can to decrease the risk
Thank you.
by the drawdown.
We go here.
We're saying there's a safety, a real safety issue here because we don't meet the Q100, the Q1000 requirements. Now last year, we had a 100-year storm. And do we know what the flow through the stream was at that 100-year storm? Because it seems that
There's no gauge upstream, but there's one downstream.
okay.
So we know that.
And what, do you know what that was?
I think that was like 574.
574.
Downstream of it.
Okay, so we had a 100-year event.
It wouldn't have been the 100-year event if it was 5.
That's
Well, no, just a second. No, the Weather Service said that was a 100-year event.
Where? Not to contradict you, but I mean, these can be localized events.
Okay.
So when you're talking flow, it could be different than precipitation from a hydrologic standpoint. So you might have had
Okay. Well, I guess my point is
your
that
precip in one area, but we're talking about a watershed. So unless you had it over the whole watershed and the flows met what I identified as the 6,700.
But you're getting at my point here, is that the Q100, Q1000 are based on models.
Yes.
But we have actual events that are biggest in 100 years, and the flows aren't 13,000, they're 500.
And
There's
I
a
tried
huge
to,
discrepancy there, and
I tried to explain some of that.
So, but my question is, since we do have actual flows from real events, real big events, that are so different from the model prediction, can we go back and question the model and change those numbers instead of drawing down the dam and creating all of the big issues that we're talking about?
That's actually a few of the questions in here, and I don't know if maybe Mike can answer that, but a lot of the questions are, what are the Q100 and Q1000 based off of? And some of the questions were, is that just what a high hazard is given and the flows that need to pass? So maybe Mike can answer that based on, similar question to what he's asking.
Well, the flows that were used are based off of this flood insurance study that were done in 2009 for the St. Croix County. FEMA did this. That's kind of the effective flow that the consultant that was hired for the dam failure analysis used. So that kind of starts where Paperjack Creek comes in and about in New Richmond area. So that's kind of that's kind of, I have like rating curves and stuff like that too I can maybe discuss with you later. But then that's kind of what they use. It's conservative. They also did some sort of calculations at the site, but they went with the effective model, and that's what FEMA uses to create their floodplains. So that's kind of why they did the conservative route. And I agree with you. Hydrology is known as voodoo, so it's tough to predict that, but we had to go with the numbers that are available at that time.
It's just that we're basing our big expenditure and potential big impacts on Lake Malibu, my big concern,
Right.
on voodoo.
Yeah, and a lot of these studies indicate that there are no gauges upstream. So,
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Right here, Neil.
Well, these are sort of related questions, but Dan and I have had the same conversation that we don't understand how this is a reasonable standard given actual flows historically. We've looked at 1965, one of the biggest flood events in the whole region, maybe in the last 100 years, didn't even attain the 6,700 flow rate then. So we just never get to the current rating even of the dam, much less 13,000 or 16,000. And yet, we're hell-bent for leather on doing that. And what I see happening here is you keep talking about 3 options. I don't think anybody believes there's 3 options.
Right.
There's replace, if you can come up with the money, which is not very likely, or remove. Repair, everything you've said, pretty much just told me repair is not an option.
Definitely.
But we keep saying it is, but it isn't really.
I don't think it's not an option. It's just, from an engineering standpoint, it's a bigger challenge than taking out what's there and putting in something new. You can't say something can't be engineered. It can be. So to take it off the plate without actually looking at it, I think is not prudent.
And we don't want to overlook that option at this time.
Not
It
at
just
this
isn't a
time.
good prudent
Right,
move.
I don't think anybody in this room believes that's really an option here. So it's really, are we gonna go for the big ticket item? And if money were growing on trees and we thought that could actually happen, we'd be all behind that, but we're not so sure it can. And what we see is it's gonna be removed, just like the others have. We know very well in the Willow River State Park what happened when those upper 2 came down. The quality of our lake diminished dramatically. That can't help but happen in Malibu as well. And the other question everybody here is thinking, and several have already raised, is let's say you take them out, and then we get our 1,000-year flood event. How have we helped the people in Lake Malibu? How have we prevented them from dying when there's no dam structure in the way at all? It's all going to come down right away on them. There's nothing impounding water. How does that improve their situation if it's the 1,000-year that everybody's so freaked out about?
I think you hit the point on the head, Nick, is that we need to do something. We can't not do something. You've kind of answered your own question. If we don't do something, the alternative is Little Falls ends up in Lake Malibu. Nobody wants it to happen. That's all borrowed sediment. The stuff behind the dam in the park has been borrowed from Lake Malibu. If it was never there, it'd be there already. So if we don't do something to manage that sediment, to fix the dam, to move forward, it's all going to be there, and nobody wants that. So you're encouraging us, get something done. And that's what we're saying as well.
I'm not encouraging you to take it down, because then it's all going to go.
No, it's not all going to go. You mean removal?
Yeah.
Even in impoundments that we've had removals on, that dams have been removed, not all the sediment moves. So I think we can manage those things, but we're going to do what you're asking us to do, and let's move
There'll
forward.
be nothing to stop the water if there's a 1,000-year flood, right? If there's no dam there.
Right, but just like in the normal stream channel, the whole channel doesn't move in every storm.
No, but the water in it moves.
The water does, sure.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to this lady over here, wonderful lady that had her hand up very early on, and we were patient to wait for you, so.
My thought, and I came to me a little while ago, was that if the Willow River Dam is taken out, then there's only one dam between Lake Malibu, Willow River, and the St. Croix River, which is a wild river and protected. So if you don't have this opportunity to slow the flow when necessary at Little Falls, it's all going to go directly into Lake Malibu and rush into the dam between Lake Malibu and St. Croix River. So what's the capacity of that dam?
The Lake Malibu Dam?
No, yes.
I know the hazard rating is different because there's no structures downstream. So the hazard rating is probably low hazard. If it would fail, there's no chance of loss of life or property or infrastructure.
But it's running into a wild river.
Makes no difference from the regulatory standpoint because it's based on flow.
Then why, when the bridge is put across a new bridge, is there all this mitigation money that's available to compensate for potential environmental damage forward?
Actually, I'm managing that project, and it's a different question and probably not one that everybody really gives too much about, but
Well, should.
the mitigation is actually for the impact to the bluff, natural scenic beauty, and then to handle the growth management. That's what the memorandum of agreement or memorandum of understanding that was negotiated at the time the bridge was approved for Town of St. Joe, St. Croix County, and DNR to manage. And it was
I
for
heard a lot of
growth.
words about water tables and drainage and all sorts of
Stormwater, and that's part of the growth management is how do you protect water quality from wastewater, the number of people that come in, and stormwater management.
So
From the
stormwater-
development as part of growth associated with the bridge.
But that Lake Nalma Bridge goes into the same part of the river at the point of this 1,100-year storm becomes a storm management.
I'm sorry, but I'm not following. It confused me.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
It's, the water will be flowing unabated, but potentially, because there is no upper river management of the water flow, causing a stress on that bridge.
I think you're asking, does the Little Falls Dam, is it a flood control structure? Does it control flooding?
Right.
No.
Not at all?
Not at all.
Okay.
It's kind of a run of the river, so anything that comes in goes out.
But they do open and close the gates.
They do, but to match the flow coming in and out as best they can.
Right.
Right.
That's
So,
what I said.
yeah, it doesn't retain or lessen the peak.
Excuse me, we can't hear, there's so many people talking.
Oh, hi, Alan.
Hey,
The question was, does Little Falls Dam, is it a flood control structure? Does it shave the peak? As you get this flow of water coming down the watershed, does it attenuate in any significance the amount of water? Does more water stay there than passes downstream? And statistically at the storm events that we're talking about, 50-year, 100-year, 1,000-year, it doesn't attenuate or hold any more water. It's kind of run of the river, much like in New Richmond. There's really no storage in that impoundment. It's not big enough. You don't have enough. Everything runs over the dam and runs right down into Malibu and then right out to the river. So.
Okay.
You have a question in the back here, sir?
I'm wondering, you had taken written questions and considered and get to those. I'm wondering if people who followed your directions should have their questions answered.
Sure, there's
You
a
wanna
lot
read
of
some of
different-
these?
Yeah, there's a lot of different questions.
Why don't you stand up, Missy? Can you do that?
Yep. There,
Thank you.
a lot have been answered, which is nice. And there is a lot of different ones, so I don't know that we're going to get to a lot of them. But one maybe for Mike is why not draw down the Little Falls Lake 2 feet to provide capacity to avoid a serious downstream flood? So why not do a partial drawdown, I think is what the question is.
Well, I mean, like I was talking about, we're going to be doing this stage, but we want to do a full drawdown. That's going to be the ultimate goal of this. That's going to eliminate all sort of risk possible, and eventually once we get to that stage, this is going to happen. With the 2 feet, there will still be some head on that structure, so you're eliminating the risk by a couple %. You know, we want to maximize our reduction of that risk of failure, so when we reduce that hydraulic or hydrostatic pressure on that dam by having no head on it.
And this question too?
Another one, who will oversee the dam drawdown? That's a really good question. And Mike can maybe expand on this, but basically it's going to be dam safety in concert with the park. So Aaron he's got a lot of experience operating that dam. So primarily it will be the two of them in concert with a lot of different professionals looking at the effects on the natural resources, the sediment movement, all kinds of different things. So I don't know if that's
good.
There'll be a lot of people there. You should come watch. Let's see.
Keep it up.
Please explain what 35% design is again. So basically what that is once we have a chosen alternative, we'll develop a preliminary scope of work and budget. And now I know that in a nutshell we break that down to a full replacement, a partial replacement or repair, or removal and restoration. Let me just tell you the full replacement can run the gamut of different ways to replace it. The partial replacement or repair has a million different ways we could possibly repair it. And the restoration has another set of different ways that we could remove it and restore it. So once we know one of those general 3 directions to go, that's when we'll join back up with the Department of Administration and the rest of our team, as well as the consultants, Ayers and Associates, and we'll flesh out what the best way is based on those criteria that are on that 3rd piece. That 3rd sheet in your packet. We'll look at those criteria to develop the best solution for whatever alternative is chosen. So that's basically what we'll do, and then we'll develop a budget towards that. Now that's a lot of resources, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of money, which is why we're not going to do that now, because we don't want to pay our consultants to develop 8 different ways to do a partial replacement if we're going to remove it. Same way we don't want to pay them tens of thousands of dollars to develop a removal option when we replace it. So we don't want to pay them to do a lot of work that we may never use. So we'll engage them again once we know the chosen alternative to develop the specifics of that alternative.
Since that was my question, could I ask, why the number 35?
You know, that's an interesting question. That is actually set by the State Building Commission and set by the Department of Administration. That is actually kind of a tipping point. You can develop a scope of work and a budget to a certain point and feel that you're 90% accurate with the scope of work and with the budget. And at the same time, though, you're not investing so much work that if you had to make changes, you'd be paying twice for it. So that's why they ask for that level, because it's reasonably accurate of a point to either change directions or move forward. So for example, if we chose to do a partial replacement and we chose a combination of 8 different gates, we went to the building commission, they said, you know what, we don't like that, we want you to do 3 gates. We didn't invest a lot of time or money or effort at that point. We can still change our direction slightly without wasting all of those resources. So it's set by the building commission basically, and they want to see, when we get to that level of design, they want to see what we've got before they say go ahead with the funding.
I didn't realize I'm so dense. Yeah. It's 35% of what?
35% of the 100% design. So 100% design is a set of plans that you can take to a contractor and it'll tell them exactly how to build it. 35, if you want to think about if you're doing a house, a 35% design would show the outer walls, some of the inner walls, and it might say here's where the bathroom, and here, so you kind of know your overall square footage, you know what kind of rooms are going to be in there, and you can reasonably say, I'm going to pay $200 a square foot for this house. That's kind of what we would do with the dam. But if you wanted to change the location of the bathroom, you still could. Or if you wanted to add a 5th bedroom, you still could do that without investing a lot of resources. But when you get to 100%, you can have a carpenter come in and actually build that wall.
So you'll make a decision on the feasibility of the chosen alternative based on less information than 35%, than a scoping.
We'll make the decision based on those 3 alternatives. So yes, based on less than 35%. We won't spend the resources to develop those alternatives to that level. But that won't necessarily, if you're going to go with a complete removal and restoration, for example, we wouldn't get down that road and then decide to put the dam back in. If that makes sense. Okay.
What's more there?
Let's see. Can the drawdown wait until the fall? I think we've kind of answered that one. It's safety risk. Let's see. Funding. Who are the DNR professionals who are working on the drawdown plan? Mike Rogney, along with a whole big team of engineers from dam safety, fisheries, water, parks, facilities and lands. There is an enormous amount of DNR professionals working on that. Did I miss anybody? Again, so a lot of these have been answered. That one's been answered. There's a lot of questions on what can we do to ensure that the dam is replaced. And I think that Ben answered that question. And you want to...
I can talk a little bit. So, you know, I feel like there's obviously some tension in the room between thinking DNR and the public. And the decision that's going to be made isn't a decision that Missy's going to make. It's not a decision that Dan Bauman's going to make. I'm not going to make it. Peter's not going to make it. It's a decision that collectively will be made by you folks, the administration, people that are elected in office, and it's going to be a group decision on what happens. So we talk a lot about when the decision's made, and I hope that that hasn't come across too strong tonight, that we'll come back to you when the decision's made. But I hope when I presented, we're going to come back to you before we present that information to the decision makers. And those are the times you'll be able to give us input on what your desire is, what you think of the research we put behind those decisions. Because the decision makers need that research, and it's our job to provide that to them. And part of that research is what you folks, your input into that. So I hope that clarifies that.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
I think a lot of the tension that you feel is because of the experience that's been happening in the last few years with the previous dams that have been removed.
Sure.
So my question is, how is this dam different?
Sure.
And what kind of feedback did you get from the previous two dams that had been removed?
Sure. And I can speak general to that, and maybe some other folks can, but I'll speak to that. First of all, we have to trust one another. Okay? A few of us in this room weren't here the last time those drawdowns were done. I was probably in college or high school. Okay? But if we don't trust each other, we're not going to get anywhere. So there has to be trust on our part with you folks and from you folks to us. So I know Dan said it tonight, but you have our word. This is a partnership. We're going to work together to move forward. I know there's a lot of issues that happened in the past, and as Dan previously mentioned, we can't go back and change the past. I'm not intimately aware of what was said or what was done in the past, and I apologize for my lack of knowledge on that, but you have my word that I will be part of as we move forward, and I see this as a partnership moving forward, okay? But it revolves around the word trust, and we have to establish that.
Yeah, and I think that's where, at least I'll speak for myself.
Sure.
Because of all the comments and the experience that I've heard and that has been shared with the community, if you will. It's the past experience where the lack of trust has developed.
Sure.
And so how you instill that trust in us is going to be very important.
Let me talk a little bit about public comment too. And I am not an expert planner. We have planners that are part of this team. We've already engaged them. They're going to be part of this, okay? But there's different ways that we're going to take feedback. And part of that, obviously, is meetings, okay? And we'll get together again and we'll talk about these alternatives as we develop them. But another way we commonly do that is we offer a time period. And Pete, I don't know if you want to talk about that, but a lot of times we open up comment periods for a given length of time. We have an email that can be sent to, a physical address. So we can take more comment than just the folks that can come to a meeting. You know, because we want everyone included. You know, everyone who wants to be included. We want to hear that. That's information that the decision makers want to hear as well. Okay. So I don't know if you can speak to that.
Sure, I will. And you compared it very aptly before to a master plan. And it is similar to master plan in this respect. The early stages of a master plan, which is kind of where we are here, is to get the public's thoughts on the early details of the project. We want people to weigh in. You're weighing in on the whole scope of the issue, everything comes in, and then it's our responsibility to go back and put that in some sort of a formidable, readable, understandable plan. So, as Ben mentioned, and I think you're clear on how you said that, I think our administration, the legislature, is going to say, what did the public think about the alternative that you gave them or the alternatives that you gave them? What was the response? I know the legislature, I know our administration is going to be very concerned. So we generally would probably do a presentation sometime early fall, again, very much like this. And we would have a minimum in a master plan case of 30 days. So 30 days would be offer you the opportunity, you and your neighbors, maybe somebody can't make the meeting, somebody's sick, 30 days to write in and make your comments known. And then it's our responsibility to go to the administration with a clear picture of what those comments are.
Summarize those comments. Summarize those comments.
We call it synthesize.
Synthesize those
It's a big word. But we also bring in individual viewpoints if they're different than other ones. So
I guess we're close enough to Minnesota that Minnesota Nice might apply here. But I must say that as one person here, we cannot let you leave this meeting thinking that you have our trust. You do not have the trust of this group.
Can I just ask why? Can I ask, so seriously, I'd like to know why.
Well, this whole thing has been a rush. We've had, popped right out of the blue. How come this project was picked instead of the 60 or 70 other dams?
Well, I want to speak to that real quick because I'm not an engineer and I sense some confusion about the high hazard rating. And I may need some help on this because I'm not a dam expert, so I don't want to speak out of turn. But I've sensed some confusion in this room. I'm not an engineer, okay, so I need regular speak on what that means as well. So high hazard, the Little Falls Dam didn't get a high hazard rating because of its structural deficiencies. And I think that may be some confusion out there. That dam could be a brand new 2015 model, and it's still going to be a high hazard dam. Okay? The dam, the ratings are based on, we've talked about it, but is everyone clear on that? Because I know when I first got involved with this, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a dam safety engineer. So is that clear to everybody? Even if it's a new structure, the rating is still high hazard. And I don't know the science or Mike can speak to that a little bit, but I just want to make sure we're all good on that.
But that doesn't explain why you're drawing the water down.
Sure, and we've mentioned we know there's a safety issue. Okay, we need to move forward. We need to fix the problem. That is what's happened up to this point.
Just relating to the trust thing.
Sure.
It came out in 2013, the money was requested for this, the 2015 to 17 time period. The first we heard of it was in 2015. There's a 2-year gap there, where there's been stuff going on that we didn't know anything about.
Let me just address that piece of it was when we thought, based on the inspections, that we could do simple gate repairs that would not have required a drawdown and would not have had significant public impact. So that's why we thought that at that point, that's why that was requested for that dollar amount. And I think the other piece of it is, we've heard a little bit of feedback about we haven't heard anything for so long, and then we just heard feedback that, but now all of a sudden things are going so fast. We are literally giving the information to you as quickly as we get it. The inspections and then the subsequent dive inspections and the feasibility study have happened very rapidly over the last few months. And up until very recently did we not know that we had to do a drawdown. I mean, so we're communicating that to you as soon as we knew. We have not had this drawdown planned for the last 2 or 3 years. When we knew that we had to have that is when we immediately brought that to you.
Back here, sir.
State that,
Yes,
you knew it.
we heard recently here that the drawdown is not to assess the condition of the dam because you already know 90% of what the condition is already. That's correct? Okay. So you have enough engineering knowledge of the dam to know what you got to work with physically. So then it's the case, using that knowledge, either designing repairs if that's practical, or replacement if it's not, because replacement is the obvious solution. The whole reason for this park and the 700,000 people coming to it is centered around the river and the lake. It's inconceivable that it's more desirable to go with one dam than to repair it. So, why spend any extra time in it if you already know what you need to know physically? Move on with a repair replacement design, whichever you need engineering wise, and get the numbers put together and go with it. All these other things are extraneous. That's the obvious solution, got to be fixed. The question is, you fix what you got, or you replace it, one or the other. Those are the only two viable solutions. But yet we fear that after you drop down, with 3 or 4 years later, we'll come back, well, we kind of give up on it. And that's what everybody's fear.
That's where the trust issue comes in.
That's understandable.
Because of previous experience that was not addressed with the previous.
Fully acknowledge it.
Yep.
Fully acknowledge it.
And we got a new question back here, just
Yeah.
hang on, sir, you go next.
With regard to the hazard or the risk of the dam, you say there's the chance of loss of life, but is there a study, what's going to happen exactly? I mean, is the whole dam's not gonna go out at once. I mean, that's,
So-
it's not gonna happen.
No.
What's
So-
gonna happen? And how much water is gonna go, are the bridges gonna get washed out? Or are we gonna have 6 feet of water over the bridge, or?
Right.
Or what's gonna happen exactly?
So part of the administrative code of compliance is that large dams have to have a dam failure analysis. So what that does is they use those flow rates determined and they run an unsteady flow model. And they run 3 conditions: the dam not in place, the dam in place with no failure, and the dam with failure. So in this model that they're using, it can calculate a flood wave that goes downstream should the whole thing fail. So from there, you can get the elevations downstream at certain points, and there actually is some information on the website about that. It has the hydraulic shadow map. It has the elevations of that, but the majority of that analysis is actually confidential because of Homeland Security. I know. Well, that's not
We
my.
can't change that.
I can't change that.
We're not
You know.
holding because we
But
don't want to share.
the information that I can share does show the map. It does show the elevations, and it does
So what
show.
you're saying is that the biggest risk is somebody who puts a bomb out.
Exactly.
So that's no different than building a new dam. It's still a high risk. Somebody can put a bomb out.
Right.
And the same thing can happen.
Right. So.
What happens if the dam fails? What's it look like?
Yes, sir, Jim?
It's just.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
So when the dam fails, it's
Doesn't
just.
make sense. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. What is the risk of life downstream?
Well, it's just going to create this flood wave, and then they use the elevations based off
How
of
big
it.
is the flood?
Well, that's what there's information on that, the
Did they
profile.
open Lake Malibu Dam when they did that?
Well, yeah, the operator will open that. You know, it'll be a big storm event when that happens.
No, and I
So-
get that it's complicated.
It's not gonna just walk, the dam isn't just gonna.
Correct. So these
Right.
things, because there is a potential for loss of life, health, or property,
How much?
any is too much. That's how the standards sit. So you design,
That's no
and the
different
code
than if it's blown up.
that is dependent on past practice, failures in the past. That's how these standards for risk, or the level of risk that we're willing to accept by the law. These are laws we're talking
what's the
about.
last
We
thing?
don't get to say, oh, we're not going to follow that one. Just like we don't for you. We don't for ourselves. You don't
Yes, you
want
do
us
all the
to pick
time
and
because
choose.
you have limited resources. You can't follow all of your regulations and all the statutory law
We
because
are-
you don't have enough money every year to do
Right.
that.
Agreed. We are going to do it here.
That's-
We're going to move forward here. Right.
And for some reason, that doesn't make me feel special.
And it
Because there's
shouldn't.
this tremendous
It's not
lack of
based on you.
information.
It's not
There's
based
a
on your
profound
personal
lack of
feeling.
transparency. And in terms of trust, you know, we have elected
Right.
officials that don't believe in evolution or climate change or gravity, that hate the DNR, that are trying to bend you to
Right.
their will.
Our obligation in this case is to make sure that we are in compliance. The structure is not in compliance, and we are moving forward with finding or getting the structure to compliance.
But the structure will continue to be a high hazard dam.
Because there are structures within the failure shadow, if the dam is in place.
So how much better off am I?
From what?
Having a new dam.
How better off am I if we replaced a dam that has, because of elevation and whatnot, a level of risk with a dam that by definition will have a level of risk?
Right.
And you're saying,
And
well,
the
it's going to be less.
classification is, does it meet the state requirement to be safe? If it meets the flow requirements, the Q100 on the principal, Q1000 overall, then it's classified as a safe dam.
But that
Right
doesn't
now,
really
it's
mean
not
that
safe.
it's safe, because you have no
Agreed.
clue about future
I'm not
rainfalls.
disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing. That argument is easy and valid and logical.
Yeah, which gives it a certain amount of power.
I'm going to jump to the back here. We got a question
Totally
back.
agree. And Jim was been asking as well.
This gentleman in the back, I'd like to get the fresh questions here if we can first. Jim, I'm keeping you reserved if you don't mind.
You might want to look at what happened in 1936 on that structure. It's the last time it failed.
Could you?
1934 failed. I believe there was one, maybe two deaths. The part that failed was that struck the arch part that you're talking about.
The arch part didn't exist in 34. In 1934, that was an earthen embankment.
Yep, and that all went out, and they built the arch on top of what was left.
Well, actually, they cleared it out, and they built the arch on available bedrock substrate. Yes.
And that area can go down. I didn't see it in our brief thing here, and I haven't read your study. There's seepage under that is far more than what's on the river.
Yes, and that there is some analysis and some geotechnical testing that looks into that in the historical record. There's almost 2,000 pages of historical record and previous testing and engineering analysis and you name it and whatnot. And we certainly didn't want that to sit and get dusty on a shelf. So that was part of the charge to these consultants, was to pay attention to the historical record, because we spent a lot of time and a lot of money getting to that point, and we don't want to ignore that. So, yeah.
It was a significant failure. I don't believe the crime was as large. So
that I can't say.
Hey, ma'am?
Yeah, I have to admit a lot of this is over my head, but I think the gist of it is that you're going to do it, no matter what anybody says. And my comment is to everybody here, and I know sadly, as the gentleman says, our elected representatives some of them don't believe in climate change, evolution, et cetera, but they are our elected representatives, and we've got to call them. Not just once, not just twice, but you've got to keep after it. You call them tomorrow, you call them next week, you say what's going on with this, and you keep after them so they know your name.
And
so, I mean, it's going to get done. You guys are going to do what you're going to do, and all we can do is call your elected representatives, have their number on your speed dial.
And I appreciate that, and Dan's made it clear we're gonna do this because we're following the law. It isn't because somebody from up above
No,
or
I'm
some
talking about for
legislator.
budgeting purposes.
It's like following the speed limit on the highway. It's a law. And one thing we try to do, and in parks, we get a lot of rangers in parks, and one thing we believe in from day one is to follow the law.
Yeah, and I'm
we try to
talking
do that.
because they vote on the budget. They vote on the budget very soon.
Exactly
And that's what you have to do.
Thank you very much for coming.
I just want to make a comment. I guess I came here to try to find out what's the alternatives, what the experts say, and I guess I'm kind of disappointed that people don't believe in what the experts say. But anyway, because it would just be like somebody not trusting what I am an expert about. But I guess my comment is, the people in Minnesota with Whitewater, when that whole flood happened, or up in Duluth, or Wisconsin Dells, they never believed that there was ever going to be a flood that would wipe out all their land and stuff here too. So, that's kind of where I go with that. And I kind of equate it to, we all pay to have a fire department, thinking that we're never going to use it. But boy, if we ever need it, you're going to be glad it was there. So I think some of this rhetoric and dialogue should be considered about what's best for the people, the public. I know the DNR are not wanting to destroy the park like we know it, but what's the best alternative? And I guess my ultimate question is, how will it be decided which alternative you're going to go with? Because people here are willing to pony up the money to save the dam or build a new dam. Would that have an impact on the decision that you make? I guess that's what I'm doing.
And much like most master planning processes, the public's input is critical. I mean, it's not the DNR's dam, it's the public's dam. And I've said it at the county committee meetings, I've said that in a couple different people's homes, that's when I've been asked to come talk to people about it, I come talk to people about it. And I've said that from the start, that without your input, then it is just the DNR's decision. So if nobody wants to contribute or participate or give us their feedback, then it's our decision and we own it. But we don't want that, as Ben said. We want the public's input, because when we go to the decision makers in the administration, who then have to go over to the legislature and present what the first thing is, have you talked to the public? Let's see what their comments were. And this administration has been very open, and if we take something over that doesn't have that, they're just going to say, go get it. That's why we're here.
If we could eliminate the third alternative and eliminating the
It'd make you
dam,
feel better.
this would be a whole different conversation.
Yeah. But then we're going to get there, and someone's going to say, well, why didn't you look at that? Go back and look at that. You know, I agree we have a representative public of one mindset. And I don't know that any of us disagree with that. But if we don't look at everything, then the question's going to come, why didn't you look at that? Go look at it.
Our job is to present the entirety to the decision makers. Just because we say, you know, we're not here standing up saying what we support or we don't. Our job is to provide that information to the decision makers. The science, the economic impacts, the recreational impacts, the public input, the public desire, and that all has to get presented.
Okay, we got a question over here.
Sorry.
I too have concerns about just the recreational aspect of the lake. I mean, I would love to see it stay, you know, for kayaking and fishing or whatever. But I do also believe, as this lady said here, we have to put our trust somewhere. And I think that there's a lot of valuable information that has come out tonight. I think there's a lot of very educated people that are standing in front of us. And we all have computers. We can all start digging into some of this information. And if it's wrong, bring it up.
Right.
But if it's right, give them a chance to make a decision. You know, with your valuable input, we all have input on this stuff. But I think I'm not professional. I don't know what the heck's going on, and half of this went right over my head. That's why these guys are here.
You mentioned recreation. I just want to add something from my side. I'm not an engineer either. The only thing I know about dams is you don't want to go over them in your boat. And that's about what I know about them. But I know a lot about parks, and I know a lot about people, and I know a lot about our visitors. And I'll tell you what, this is like one of our top 5 parks in our system. It is one of the most important ones we have. We're going to take this guy right here this summer, and he's going to have 700,000 people coming into his property, and he's going to have to explain to 670,940, because the other ones are right here, what's going on. We don't enjoy it. I got to tell you, I'm not happy about the fact that the lake's going down, but I have heard from these guys, and I've heard from the other ones behind them, and the ones behind them, and the heirs associates. We got to do it. There's absolutely no question we got to do it.
Do you have any estimate on the lost revenue of if the lake goes down?
Pardon me?
Do you have any estimates on the loss of revenue?
We don't yet, but that's things we're looking at. I mean, we've already collected some information, obviously, statewide, and we have some local information in that, but we need to hone in on that a little bit more.
I mean, truly, I would probably not come if the lake were here.
Sure.
I mean, that's just my personal, because
And there's probably a lot of people that share that with you. Yeah.
We're going to still keep taking questions here. Jim, you're up.
I can really shed some light on all that, and I agree with both of you. There's a lot of great information tonight for all of us. I do have just 3 brief statement questions. My first would be to Missy, and it gets into transparency, and you had indicated that you reached out for the $3 million back in 2013 when you were speculating that just gate repair was going to be necessary.
Not speculating, but it's based on the inspections.
But the report that mandated the Q100 and Q1000 spillway capacities came out in 2009. So how would repairing the gates have increased the spillway capacity, and why were we not brought into that when this same issue that we're talking about tonight was on the table in 2013 when you made the decision?
Sure. Well, I might need Mike's help with this, but the gate repair would not have increased the spillway capacity. Right. But at the time of the inspection, we felt that we could possibly, and hopefully more likely, we could increase the spillway capacity without taking out the existing structure. And that's what we had known based on the inspection is what we had hoped that we could do. And so that's what we knew at that time. Does that answer that?
A bit, but it doesn't sort of doesn't back up what you said you have to go through to get to the 35%. So,
sure, and we're not at that phase. So basically what we did is we did when we had the inspections done, we had preliminary estimates based on those inspections. And those inspections have been made available on the website. So we had estimates based on that, and we added in, our fees and DOA fees and all that jazz. We added all that in, and that's what that $3 million is based off of, is filling the voids, doing gate repair, portage signage and some other things is what that's based on. So, and then subsequently after that, we did the dive inspection, which revealed a lot more. And now we have the feasibility study. And just let me let you know, the feasibility study will be available on the website at some point next week. We'll be able to get it up there so you can take a look at that. That was a lot of the questions in there. Can we see the feasibility study? We just got the final draft maybe a week ago. So we'll be putting that up for everybody. It's 80 some pages, which is why we didn't print it, but it will be available for you on the website. Sure.
And then I just wanted to compliment Aaron on a really wonderfully run park. I had the opportunity to meet with him just the other day. I purchased my state park stickers, and I did this as just John Doe citizen, and went through the entire process. And never once was I informed that the lake was going to be drawn down until I asked Lauren, the sweetheart of a woman, is there anything I should be expecting this summer? And she said, oh yeah, the dam is going to be, or the lake is going to be drawn down. And I asked, how can we get input from the community? And she said, well, I've got a comment form, same one we got, but no details. The reason I bring this up is I've had 2 conversations with Sheila Harsdorf, Senator Harsdorf, my most recent, the day before yesterday. And she indicated the importance of community involvement. And I thought, why, if I've been a business owner for 35 years, if I wanted information, I would ask the pertinent questions to gather that information, to see, do people want a lake? Does it not matter to them? But Senator Harsdorf told me, if we don't have people already working on this, we're already not even in the starting gate. So that's a concern. And then my last question would be to Gordon. And this is the 2 engineering reports. And I'm just going to cut right to the chase. When you read through the executive summary, the very last sentence says, in summary, below water, the dam is in good condition. That's after 170 pages of everything you've talked about. Could you show me in these where it contradicts that summary of the executive decision?
I believe that statement comes at the end of the dive inspection. And I'd like to also point out that the dive inspection only goes down to the top of the sediment. Okay. And taken in that context, what I see seems to be okay. What I can't see, I did not comment on. And that's kind of what that statement really means. It's only a partial view of the totality of what's there.
And I'm a normal person. I appreciate that. Thank you, because that's what I needed to have a little something to sink my teeth into that right. We've got something going.
In January of this year, I conducted a much more in-depth interview, if you will, with the dive team and the results and the report to make sure that we had a much better handle on what's in between the lines in that document and what's not. So, and with that information, then we brought that into the feasibility study as well.
Thank you. Yeah, Buck Malik. I'm a member of the Friends of this Park group, and I'm trying to back into how many dry summers we should anticipate. This is probably a Missy type question here. Trying to put together the estimates that you had. We understand that in the fall will be the strategic alternative analysis paper. And that will then go to department heads and internals of the agency. Then it would go from there, according to Missy, to the State Building Commission, I believe, and the Department of Administration. And wondering if there's a certain time of year when they take that, or whenever you're ready. Then to the legislature. So now we're looking at, presumably the legislature doesn't meet again until the beginning of 2017. Okay, so we need to be ready for that stage. If the legislature says pass go, or whatever the preferred alternative is, then we're looking at 6 months to a year for design, but so it's complicated projects, so we have a year. 6 months to 2 years to construct. This is not a pour more concrete over the top, it's a real job, so 2 years there. So there's 3 years after the legislature says yes and provides funding, and 2 years before we even reach that point. So are we looking at 5 dry summers?
I don't know that we're looking at 5 dry summers. I think there's too many variables right now to pinpoint that. First of all, we don't know what the alternative is, so the design time, construction time, all of that kind of stuff will vary depending on what the chosen alternative is. Could that be as much as 2 to 3 years on the long end and 6 months to a year on the short end, potentially? If we pair that with the budget approval process, right now, if you had to throw mud at the wall and make it stick, they kind of line up. I think we're talking 3 at least, 15, 16, 17. It could be longer. I think conservatively though, I think we're talking at least probably 3. So this summer, 16 and 17.
That seems awfully optimistic.
Can the stars align?
Did you say that the legislature would decide a goal before they convene again?
Well, the building commission is supposed to meet 10 months out of the year. So we have potentially 10 different opportunities. They don't always meet that much. They don't have to ever meet.
They're not the
But the legislature...
This is the governor's building commission. They meet regularly.
The governor's building commission meets regularly. The joint finance committee and the governor to decide on the budget. You know, right now they're deciding on the 15-17 budget. So for the 17-19 budget, they'll decide on that in the spring of 2017. That doesn't necessarily mean that this process will go in line with that. It might circumvent that process. It might have to go with that process. We don't know at this point how the chosen alternative will fall into the budget process. A lot of it depends on how much it is, what the funding sources are. There's just too many variables to know how that will line up with the legislative process or the state building commission process.
So you can really see the possibility of a special session to authorize the dam in the Willow River State Park? Oh.
I'm not going to rule it out, but I'm not going to say in favor of it. I don't really know. It really depends. It also depends on available funding. You know, if we come up with all the funding from a grant source, they won't have to decide on it because it won't be bonded dollars.
Sure. You know, just to clarify, you know, we're here to present the process that we have to go through on every project. We don't know what could change from that because we aren't in control of that. We are here to present the process that we follow, that we are required to follow. Could it deviate off of that? It's only speculation. We can't answer that, and that's all we can say on that.
Okay, a couple more questions here.
One more. You were talking about sediment. I'm Warren Schneider, and I live on Lake Malibu. And my big, my immediate concern is Lake Malibu water quality. And as we progress on this, we're going to decide how to do sediment control as we discover what happens. Could we include in the budget mitigation for the damage that's done in Lake Malibu as part of the project? The previous 2 dam projects have done incredible damage to Lake Malibu as they were removed, and it fell on the landowners. You know, that we've been told, if you want to do something, go ahead, dredge it, zero cost. Could we include in the overall impact of the dam drawdown, removal, repair, whatever the 3 alternatives are, money to take care of the problem in Lake Malibu?
Yeah, I would say at this point, probably we wouldn't have authorization in the $3 million and how it's lined up, because we're working on what we have in front of us as far as the approval on the $3 million is. I think it's possible that we would definitely work on some outside, a separate project. I know there's lake grant funding. We could use, if we're going to explore sources for up in the park, why aren't we doing it for the system? So I think there's opportunities. I think the conversation's a good one. And if we're going to do something, I've heard somebody, maybe it was even you at Jim's house, let's do something meaningful here, with what we have. So I guess that would be my response, Warren. I don't think, I would have to say no on the current dollars, but I think it's important for us to talk about it.
The current dollars are just the front end. And if long-term involves fixing
That's a
and
really
repairing,
good point.
that Lake Malibu should be included.
That's
as
a
part of it.
fantastic point. We wouldn't want to make it a deal breaker, but I think it's a great point. And it's probably one that, as you've talked about here, in your conversations with those folks that are influential in this decision, that would be a good one to have. That it's just not just about this, but shouldn't it also be about, and ask the question. Not direct it, but ask the question. And see what response you get from those that are influential in identifying what those dollars can be used for. That's excellent. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any experience or examples of communities who have gotten together to apply the kind of pressure, build the kind of support, whichever way you have to always send it, build support, gather money? Are there examples of, in your experience, of how that was done? Or is there a model that we could follow that's been reasonably successful? They all do different things. But
There's a whole variety.
Yeah, it is. It's kind of across the board, and I think some of the key points have really been hit here. Is awareness is the big one. That's always the bottom line of community support, and then not only amongst yourselves, but of engaging a diversity of groups, whether it's the Lake Association, the Friends Group, community development, commerce, the chamber, those kind of things. Having a strong base, and the more diverse that base is, the stronger your message goes to those that have the decision making. Is there one model that fits everywhere? Absolutely not.
some that have been successful, and there are many that have not been.
Yeah, and most of these are not, if you look at some of the smaller communities, like Independence, they just went through a major down on Bugle Lake, a dredge and repair. How they did that, I think, was working with public and private dollars. And those are always good models. They had some grant funding, they had some big industry that participated, they had some their own tax dollars. So this blend is what strengthens the influence, I think, on what you want to see happen.
Yes, sir.
During this drawdown, which is obviously going to happen, let me back up a little bit. In heavy rain events or spring runoff, I've seen the Little River go chocolate brown and beyond. I mean, you would think you could walk on it very quickly. Sure. So, what is the permissible sort of level that you're looking at for, what's coming out the bottom end of the dam in terms of sediment? And how do you mediate that? All of a sudden you say, wow, this is really getting to be dark chocolate.
How about volume too, the flooding in the river, along the banks of the river?
Well, from the excess flow or whatever.
The controlled amount of, how do you keep it within the bank?
Yes.
I think that's through that maximum. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it's just a lot of the efforts that I was describing in there, like we're gonna try to get that lake bed seeded so that we don't run into those issues as much as possible, and solve those check dams and things like that.
Even during the drawdown? I mean, once it's drawn down, I understand that, but, I mean, buckthorn's gonna take over anyway.
I mean, any vegetation cover will help, Yeah.
Any veg is better than no veg.
Yeah. You don't want an exposed lake bed because when the rain falls down, it's gonna, sediment everywhere and also detach and bam, it goes downstream.
But again, I'm wondering, as you're looking at this outflow during the drawdown, what's going to raise a red flag saying we have to slow down or we have to somehow filter this better?
Right. I mean, there's going to be transport regardless.
There's transport now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, when when we're drawing it down, mixing it with that flow that's coming from that big gate, you're not going to get the high concentration. All of a sudden, bam. I mean, you're going to get the fine stuff. That's always suspended. But we got to try to tackle the coarse stuff and then get that readily mixed.
Well,
we
I'm
got
downstream. I'll be watching.
Well, the fine stuff, the turbid stuff, the clays, turbidity and suspended solids are two different things.
Yeah.
So turbidity is those really fine, those clays, and that's just going to continue to move through the system. What is going to be the hindrance in the long run is the heavier stuff, the suspended solids. And that's what we're doing everything we can to try to control.
And that's what a lot of those measures will capture.
Yeah.
Like those small pools and check dams, that the sediment, the heavy stuff goes down. So.
We had a question here first, then you. Okay.
I'm just kind of stuck on the number for the refitted for hydropower, and it's like we're not even going to talk about that. And so is that based on flow, the head, there's just not enough there to make it feasible?
I'm not too familiar with the hydropower process, but what I know is that, so we'd have to go through the FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. We'd have to go through that licensing process, and I know the city of River Falls is doing it now, and it's 4 or 5 year process just to get that done. So there's a lot of tests as well as water quality. Just that process alone could cost a couple $1 million. And FERC regulations, they actually require dams to be designed for the probable maximum flood, which is near the 10,000 year storm. So you'd have to significantly increase that, and we don't know. You'd have to do an investigation of the flows just to even see if there's going to be enough output to get the best economic feasibility to do that. So it's just, you need full-time staff to operate it, open gates all the time, things like
You
that.
partner with the power companies, like XL Energy is really into clean power. What power is cleaner? As long as you've already got it, you've got to have a dam.
I really think it's an economic decision. Absolutely. And unless you have enough head and enough flow, you never make your return on investment. And then
XL Energy.
Smart man, Doug. Yeah. A good question, though. Really good question.
Okay, Red. Yes, sir.
Jim Laird, I own land on the lake right now. Would you at least read the questions, even if you don't have time to answer them? I'd like to have my question read.
I didn't pull it out on purpose, Jim. You can
actually trust that.
Okay.
It's an important question.
Sure. Well, the second one's an easy one, and we can provide this on the website. Can you provide a list of the DNR personnel at this meeting? So yes, we could put that on the website, so you can take a look at that. And then the first one, a little bit more in depth, is given that the DNR has conducted a number of strategic alternative analyses, what % have resulted in dam removals? And I can't answer that. I don't know how many we have done.
The other question is what I really want to read.
I don't. Go ahead if you want.
Well, did you want to read that third question? We'll do the good stuff and just save the...
No, that's it. You just wanted the personnel, right? Is that what you wanted?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other, I'll get there.
Well, at this point, only one, because there's only one removal. So we in looking at the full spectrum, we looked at various stages of repair up to and including taking everything out and putting in something new. So, removal and restoration is just one end of that.
But if I can share, the department just went through this process with the Montello Dam, and that one was replaced. And that was just last year. Multi-million-dollar project. Went through the same exact process we're doing here to get public feedback, input, same strategic analysis, all the hydrology, all the hydraulics. So the Montello Dam would be the one I'd offer Jim as the most recent example of what the process that we're using today.
That had a lot of public involvement. A lot of public involvement.
Was the Montello Dam state-owned?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
Yes, yes, sir.
So can I just have a follow-up question regarding Lake Malibu and the sediment? Are you going to have a beginning point and then monitor it through this process? Or how are we going to know how much sediment has actually come through?
That's a good point. It's something that we should talk to Paul and or Buzz about, if they have some study dollars to come out and do that, or if there's lake owners that are willing to set up some protocol. I think that's an excellent point.
We're going to be monitoring silt flow to the extent we can downstream. We're not measuring every piece that goes through, but we're going to get some idea of silt flow. But the idea of measuring it is a good point.
The tough thing is then, okay, what came through a storm event and what came as part of the activity. and then what do you do about it? I think the better point, as Warren was saying, is how do we do this collectively? You know, if you just want to move sediment through the system, when you open Little Falls, you open Lake Malibu. And everything that moves in moves out, but that's not a real good alternative, you know? Then it becomes a free-flowing system. Not a good alternative.
Half the lake is only 2 feet deep.
Yeah. That's what I think what Warren's talking about is a
I just think
good
it's
conversation.
important to have a beginning and an ending, or in between, to determine what the effect is.
I got a question here, and a question here.
I got a whole different question that we've not discussed. That's dealing with the 700,000 people that come there on an annual basis to camp. What is the DNR doing to gather information from them? Because that's what the elected officials are going to need to replace that dam. What are we doing? Is it electronic? Is it paper at the gate? What are we doing to gather information from those people? Because that's going to be critical in the decision.
I can talk about that. So, right now, we're working, we have professionals in the DNR that deal with scientific studies. So, I know, I'm not a scientist, okay? So, yeah, and not the realistic, easy thing, we'll hand out pieces of paper. What do you like about the park? Okay? Right. You and I, that may be what we do. You know, I get that. We need to make sure that we do this in a scientific way so our results are accurate and defendable. Exactly. So things we're looking at, we're working on getting that done ASAP. We need to get some work done before the drawdown even starts. We need to acknowledge those people that are coming in over the next 4 weeks, get some information from them. We have records of all of our campers. We can do outreach to all of those. We have camper records back. I don't know how long the system keeps, but several years. If you've ever camped in our property and you come in, most likely you'll be in our system. Okay. So we have that information. We're looking at doing some blasts out to those folks, so maybe some Survey Monkey type things where we send them a link to a survey and we gather that from them. Obviously, our visitors are very important to us. You know, that's as are you folks. Like I said, we all work in, you know, this is a community, okay? We're part of this local community, as are the visitors that come in here on a transient basis and stay at our property. So we're gonna gather that from all those folks. We need to make sure we do it right. I'm with you, I'm not a scientist, I just started, hey, what do you like about the park?
Let me fill this out.
And let me give you a little example of one study that I know this from my days in college was looking at landscape aesthetics and how do you measure things? Why do people come here? And I know they did this on, actually I believe on the St. Croix Riverway, and I know it was done on the Lower Wisconsin Riverway. And that was a simple method that they used. Why do people come here? And you know, you think people take, you know, photos of things. So they handed out disposable cameras. There's one way to do it. Here's a disposable camera. Hand this back in and you take photos of why you come here. Okay? Another method you might not think of. There's different methods of collecting that information. We're going to get moving on that. I know we're on a time crunch. We're on a big time crunch. I acknowledge that. We're going to get going on it. Okay? We're already going on it because we're exploring how to do this.
I gotta tell you, we need a TV timeout. Okay, folks, can we all sit down again? Our TV break's over. The TV guy's ready to put us back on video again. I know some of you have left. Well, not some of you, but some have left. But I did talk to some people. They still have some questions, so I want to make sure we answer those. I was telling somebody a minute ago, and they said I should have mentioned this earlier, so I want to mention it now. This is an interesting factoid for you. Wisconsin State Parks has 9% of the land that the DNR owns, 9%. Okay, keep that number in mind. But we also have 55% of the buildings that the DNR owns are in state parks. That's a big number. Well, listen to this number, because this one will blow you away. We have 24% of all the buildings in the state of Wisconsin that are state-owned. That includes the universities. So you're looking at this one person right here, this lady right here, handles the facility maintenance and repair of all those buildings. And I'm telling you, every day of the week we get a broken pipe, electrical failure, a safety item, a roof issue. Her job is to, number one, safety, take care of safety, number two, compliance. So those are the two biggest things we do.
We have literally hundreds of millions in work that needs to be done or is projected to be done. It's a major issue for us going forward. So what happened this year? The stewardship plan for this year is very little stewardship money coming out, which is the money we use to fix parks and roads and dams. Really, the only money we got was this dam. And why is that? Because this is the #1 project that we have in the state park system. And I can't reiterate that enough. I can't tell you how many shower buildings I'd like to fix. I have shower buildings that we've shut down because we've got water issues or whatever. So Missy's doing a great job of repairing those and doing what she can. But would I like a new shower building? I'd love a new shower building. We've got to fix this dam. This is #1. It's our biggest issue, and we're going to go ahead and do it. So fix the issue, which is the drawdown that we're talking about. Yes, sir.
One of you probably knows the category, Dan probably knows, of the water below this dam. I think it's exceptional resource standard. It's either outstanding or exceptional, but I think since it's a Class 1 trout stream, it's probably exceptional resource value. That's the EPA classification.
I think it's a Class 2.
Okay, then the question is not a dam considered a point source for EPA purposes? And if so, that means you cannot discharge water through it that is worse than the background quality of the receiving water.
Spoken like a lawyer.
Or a guy who was recognized by the DNR for some ambiguous reward that you did.
Thank you,
Well, great things. But no, it's not a point source discharge. It's not classified as a point source discharge. And it's never been, and I'm guessing it never will be. But if it was, I agree.
I noticed you didn't say, because your engineer didn't say it earlier, he said to the contrary, that there will be silt going down there.
Yes, you can't stop it. You can't stop it today.
But it's not going to decrease, it's going to increase. There's no way it will decrease as you're doing the drawdown.
Correct. We are going to lose some sediment. That's inevitable.
Dan, I thank you for your candor. You've been wonderful. Question here.
Yeah, we've made the comment several times about public input, the importance of public input, and the partnership, and all that kind of stuff. And starting in February, when we were out of the country, heard about this, got online. I checked the Hudson paper online, week after week after week after week, nothing about it. And I just looked at other sources, and when we got home, looking at the paper, nothing about it, nothing about it. So Karen went she's well acquainted with a lot of the retailers in town. First name
You put that very nicely.
So she took a little article that was in Wisconsin Outdoor News or something. There was a half-page article that kind of summarized the whole thing. Just took it around to some of the owners of some of the businesses in town and said, "Are you aware of this?" Nobody knew a thing about it. I mean, I have to say, if everybody at the DNR thinks this is such a partnership thing and everybody needs to get behind it, it'd be good if you do a little more work in getting some publicity for this thing. This should be in the paper every week.
But why aren't they here tonight?
Why aren't
They don't know. Nobody knows.
No,
Why
the
isn't
paper does. Yeah.
Why isn't the paper?
We send out the news releases. We can't force them to come.
Exactly.
We've had personal contact with them. We use our PAM, Kevin Harder, to make the contacts. So,
Yeah.
I know we're not going door to door, but we're going to
Kevin, you want to look for you now?
doors. I know that's not enough.
Dan's right. We have in several now sent out news releases to area media, and I think there was notices in the Pioneer Press, just notices that said there was going to be a meeting. There was a reporter here tonight from River Towns.
Oh, good.
I was wondering where he was from. He sat in front of me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Took some
good.
pictures and notes.
Yeah.
I didn't know where he was from.
It's Mike.
It is
Hudson
Mike
Star
on there.
Observer.
Oh,
Yeah,
Mike,
so
yeah.
I imagine it'll be in several of the River
I had
Towns
told
papers.
I had told him to come to this meeting, so
Yeah,
that's why.
I talked to Mike as well. So he has done one previous story.
Right.
And he, I think, will be the primary reporter for River
Oh, that's
Towns.
good.
This was not reported well last time. That was my complaint about the whole thing. I mean, everything happened as a disaster as far as I was concerned, and it was never reported. And so it was really disappointing that
There
press
were no
didn't pick
reporters
up
here
on
that
what was happening.
previous meeting, and it's also nice to have, public access cable here tonight, of course. So this, but you're also free to contact. I mean, I'm not telling you what to do, but you can contact, you can write letters to the editor, you can do all those type of things too.
So I have a question. You talked about the strategic analysis, and then you also talked about, and I think it was a very important word, in your process, you're going to synthesize what you hear. And as I see it, you've got a matrix of the three alternatives and apply that. I think that's really important that along the way, people, so that synthesis doesn't happen at the very end. So, people can interpret it differently. 60 people here might write a different synthesis, but if that could be made, made available to the public, and so it's not, in the bottom of a report, you see, okay, this is what we see at now, because there might be feedback that maybe the synthesis changes. Or you're seeing, all parts of the elephant, because maybe you're going to all the meetings and not everyone here's going that. I just think that's a really important piece if you're using that to help make that decision. And I would just like to thank everybody, all the experts you bring in. I know Dan has said that he's willing to come everywhere. I think they're really reaching out to build that trust, and I appreciate it.
We're certainly trying. And so, and they talked about this earlier, there's two parts of this. One is what we're doing now, and these gentlemen, Missy presented all the information about what we're doing now. The next step, the gathering information based on what we might show as alternatives, the gathering information that will synthesize the data, bring in the outliers, because it's amazing how much the outliers are. There might be 300 comments, please replace the data, just to give an example. That's all they'll say. So we can say that 300 people said, but it's those outliers that really kind of start to shape how people feel about the plan. And the decision makers really look at those. I'm not saying that they don't trust the DNR, because they hope they do. But they want to know what the public thinks. And it's really critical to them that the public, if they feel strongly about a certain way, and you talk about the community getting together and putting together sort of a mini force of lakeshore associations and people, it means a lot. So keep that in mind as we go into that next step, beyond the drawdown, that next step, start to put together a plan. Repair, replace, remove. We need to know what the general consensus is and what people think the plan should be at that point.
It's kind of a two-part thing. On the funding, my understanding was you don't have the funding approved yet for the silt mitigation, or is it approved?
It's been approved by the State Building Commission, but it is not yet in the budget.
Okay, so the next part of the question is, if it doesn't get approved by the legislature, what happens? So you're going to do a
Don't know.
drawdown with no silt mitigation?
We don't know the answer to that question.
Okay. Would you do a drawdown?
We
without
have to
silt
do the
mitigation?
drawdown. We have to do the drawdown.
So that answers that question.
We don't know.
Yeah, I know, but it answers my question.
Oh, sure. Okay, go ahead.
At the first meeting, there was a conversation about what are you going to do with the fish? And people were, as I remember the questions, would it be transferred to Lake Malibu or some other body of water? And the comment was that couldn't be done. The fish had to be quarantined before that could happen. I remember that very clearly. They were looking for a source where they could do that. But now I hear they're just going to let it down. So what happened between that meeting and this meeting?
My brother can answer that. I had a conversation with Marty as well on that. They had to, with the rules of moving fish with the VHS diseases, things like that, there has to be a licensed fish facility, basically a fish farm where they move those fish to. They have to stay in quarantine, they have to be tested before they can move to another body of water. There's a process in that. Marty explored all of the available. There just aren't any places that he can move fish to. So there's no holding facility to put those fish in. So he doesn't have that ability to move those fish to another location. In talking with him a little bit about the fish that's in the lake, I guess he didn't express to me that he expected that there'd be a high mortality rate of the fish. He figured that the fish would go downstream, and a number of fish are going to stay in the actual body of water. Especially in that initial part of the drawdown when we obviously will reduce the pool to that bottom sill. There'll still be some water in there that those fish will concentrate in there. But some of those fish will move downstream. They'll go through the gates. They go through the gates now. They go. The fish go in and out there. There's not a bunch of fish downstream, I guess, floating around. They do move, they do go through that water and they'll go in the pool, especially once that lake level drops down and they're dropping through that pool. The water will be coming out of that gate probably, 12 inches or so, and they're only dropping 2 feet. So it's not like they're coming out of there and dropping 50 feet down. They're going to go through, once they get too concentrated inside that pool, they're going to be to the point where, okay, I'm gonna follow the flow on downstream, and they're going to move on down. Is it going to change the composite of the river downstream and Lake Mallow? It is. It will change the composite because you're going to add more warm water fish that's normally inside the lake to the river downstream, so we'll change things like that. But most likely those fish, especially the warm water fish, they're going to seek out Lake Mallow as far as they're going to move down that area and find another spot similar to where they're at, and very similar, a lot of shallow water. The northerns are going to move into the shallow waters of Lake Mallow most likely. Is there going to be some mortality? Of course there's going to be some mortality. There always is probably some mortality, but for the most part, Marty did not express that he's expecting to see millions of fish, and floating around down there. That'd be unlikely. So, but the problem was that there just wasn't a place to move those fish to. So
if nature does it, it's okay.
If nature does it downstream, it's okay. Yes.
Downstream being the operative word.
Yeah.
One thing that's been bothering me all night, and it's about this $3 million thing that's not approved, and the distrust issue that's surfaced and all of those things. But part of the distrust is what's happened with the tear out of the last 2 dams and the silt and sediment. There was no mitigation. I guess there was promises made to take care of Little Falls Lake. It never happened. But what I just heard is really disturbing to me. You guys are going to start the drawdown June 1st, come hell or high water. And if there's no money, how is Mike going to deal with the sediment? I don't get that.
Well, can I address part of that? Some of this is maybe estimating on our part, but the biggest part of the budget process, probably from our viewpoint, is probably going to be joint finance. He may very well could be done by June 1st. Logical answer.
But we don't know that.
We don't know that.
So if it's not?
Second part is what kind of trust do we have in the process so far that's happened? There is no other money besides the dam in the Parks capital development budget. So enough people have thought this is very important. The governor was very much behind it. The building commission was unanimous in endorsing it. In my mind, I'm going to stick my neck out, but I will a little bit. I'd be very, very surprised if this didn't make it. And I'm sticking my neck out by saying that, but I see no efforts anywhere that would say that people don't like this. So.
Well, I think we also realize, though, that you can't get this fully drawn down to the point without doing that sediment management. Mm-hmm. So that might change a bit in how Mike does some of his drawdown and how we use mitigation methods to help manage that sediment. Are check dams going to cost $3 million? No. We don't know how much we're going to need and how much that's going to cost. So it's not to say that if we don't get the $3 million, we're not going to do any sediment management. They're not conclusive like that. Yes.
That's big.
No, it's a very valid concern. Very valid concern. But I would also echo what Peter is saying too. it would be very, I would guess it would be unlikely that if the building commission already passed it and the governor endorsed it, that the joint finance committee would go against that.
You can't say never, but we feel very good about this one.
Same attitude about the dam?
Yeah.
Everybody should know that Sheila Harsdorf is on the Joint Finance Committee.
Yeah.
So that's,
Yeah.
we have some direct points.
We've written letters already, so.
And I've been in contact with both of their offices and their staff, so they're well aware, and I keep them updated on notices and minutes and studies and all that stuff, so they have it, they're on my distribution list.
Questions? Any other questions?
Did you read all the?
There are some that I did not read. There's some that,
One really important one.
you have a really important one? Why don't you ask it? You can ask it.
What's your important?
Yeah, why don't you just ask it?
There's, go ahead.
Okay, here's my question. What's the probability that one, the dam is restored to meet Q100 standards, that's step one. Two, that the sediment is removed from Little Falls Lake to the point that you have sand and gravel. And three, that the lake is restored to the depth that you could actually stock trout. So what's the probability of those three things happening? What chances do I have? Would you say 50%? Would you say 75%? What chance do I have?
I don't think we know any of those things. I don't think we can tell you a probability on any of those things.
Because whatever we say is going to be wrong.
That's what I would like to see.
Great question.
That's what I think is your goal. You should have some goal. You don't have a finish. That's your finish, okay? You got to start, but no finish.
The one thing I can tell you is that if a dam, a fully new constructed dam is put back, it will have to meet the Q100 and the Q1000.
Right.
That I can tell you, the one is put back. That's 100% if it's put back.
Yeah.
The other things, I don't think we can speculate anything on.
It's not responsible for us to speculate. That's not how the process works. You're a process guy, Jim. You're asking us a question that can't be answered.
I know, that's my goal. I want to see those three things accomplished. So now, by saying that question, I've given you what I think. I want my expectations.
Appreciate it.
It's not some speculation. It's expectation.
I can appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Is that something that can come out of the strategic analysis process when you look at the effects of the impact of each of the options?
I don't know about that, but I will make two other comments. One of the things is that if you look on that third piece with the criteria of putting a dam back, one of them is to have a low-level draw so that you can put cold water in to increase the quality of the trout stream. Okay, that's another one. The other thing that I can tell you is that once we do get to an alternative, one of the pieces of developing that alternative is looking at the lake bed as a whole and the health of the lake bed and the future of the lake bed. So whether or not we would dredge or remove sediment for more of the lake bed than in front of the dam, that will be up for discussion as the future of the recreation, depending on what the alternative is. So those things I can tell you are being looked at, but I can't tell you if those things would be included and how they would be included.
This warm water lake thing is constant DNR, but I can find water in Perch Lake that's colder than anything in the Willow River. So don't tell me that it's warm water necessarily. It depends on where you are in the depth of the lake.
It's a classification. It's
Yeah.
just it's like a scale.
Okay.
You know, it has to meet certain criteria to be classified cold, cool, or warm. So it isn't really always based on the temperature at the second, or here or there. It's a scale. Good.
Other hands?
Hey.
Are we going to make a cookie run?
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Remember, if you will, to keep an eye on the DNR website. You can look at the federal website for the flow data. Keep an eye on the DNR website for important news. Sign up for that capital. Give you pieces of information